What do you do when you've spent your whole life building an empire, only to realize your family never truly saw you? Clara Walker had created her own architectural empire from scratch, despite her family's indifference. On her 35th birthday, after years of exclusion, she found herself left out of her mother's glamorous celebration. But she wasn't going to be a silent part of their world anymore. Clara took control, exposing the truth behind her family's charade and building something far more meaningful, a future where love wasn't bought, but earned. Stay tuned to see how Clara transforms her life and finds true happiness. Before we dive in, make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell. Welcome to HDT Revenge Tales, where justice always finds its way. Good morning, Miss Walker. On the 45th floor of a sleek Chicago high-rise in the Clara Walker Architectural Design Office, the clock struck 6:00 a.m. Clara nodded briefly to the cleaning staff's greeting as she made her way to her desk by the window. Below, Michigan Avenue bloomed with vibrant tulips, bathed in the soft light of a sun that had yet to fully rise. Her office, a reflection of her success, displayed numerous architecture and natural design awards. The framed cover of Forbes magazine, where she had been featured, hung modestly on the wall. As the head of one of Chicago's most renowned architectural design firms, Clara had spent countless nights at this very desk, building her empire. Dressed in a simple navy pantsuit with minimal makeup, her eyes held a steely determination, an unshakable resolve that had defined her since she graduated at the top of her class from the University of Chicago School of Architecture. Starting her own firm at 30 had been no easy feat, but the $10 million in annual revenue she'd built was a testament to her grit. The ping of a new voicemail on her smartphone pulled her from her thoughts. "Jenny, we're off to Hawaii. We're celebrating Brittany's birthday." It was her mother, Vivian, one of the most successful real estate agents on Chicago's North Shore. Vivian lived an extravagant life in her 1920s historic mansion on Sheridan Road. On weekends, she hosted lavish brunch parties surrounded by high society friends who admired her wealth. Brittany's voice interrupted the message. "Mom, this hotel room is amazing!" Clara's younger sister Brittany was a lifestyle influencer with 1 million followers. Despite being nominally the head of an architectural design company, her lack of practical business acumen didn't stop her from securing projects through her flashy social media presence. Brittany's posts from the Ritz-Carlton regularly amassed over 100,000 likes, and her weekends were spent at yacht parties or luxury spas, leisureful moments that the media couldn't help but cover. Clara's phone buzzed again with a worried text she had sent earlier. "Is work okay?" Her stepfather, Richard, had immediately called in response. "Clara, can you handle all the family paperwork this week?" His voice was polished, but Clara could hear the indifference. Richard, an investment banker, had married her mother 10 years ago. He kept up a gentlemanly facade, but privately he looked down on Clara. His annual ritual of buying a new luxury car, his latest being a Bentley Continental GT, stood proudly in their garage. Richard was also the one family member who had never tried to hide his coldness toward Clara. "Yes, I understand." Clara spoke the words quietly, hanging up the phone without emotion. On her wrist, a Cartier watch, a keepsake from her late father, caught the light. She glanced out the window, her eyes briefly landing on her Wilmette townhouse in the distance. She had stayed up late last night, yet again, organizing her sister's company's financial statements. Despite Brittany's outward glamour, the company's management was in disarray. Clara's 35th birthday was fast approaching. For the past few years, there had been no birthday wishes from her family. No calls, no messages. She had long been absent from the family photos Vivian took in Palm Beach. When asked about vacation plans, Clara always found excuses about work. Though deep down she knew the truth, she was never included. At night, after returning home from the office, Clara opened an old family album. There, photos from before her father's passing showed a family of 4, arms around each other, smiling. Back then, her mother had loved her too. But after her father's funeral, something changed. While her mother's attention shifted entirely to her younger daughter, Clara had quietly faded into the background. A tear fell onto the high-quality Crane and Company stationery she'd been working on, but she didn't allow herself to dwell on it. She wiped the tear away and continued working, her emotions locked away beneath the surface. In her professional life, she commanded respect from clients and employees alike. But the one thing she longed for, the one thing she couldn't reach, was love from her family. On the 45th floor of Willis Tower, Clara finished her final presentation. From the 30-foot-high conference room windows, the Chicago skyline spread out in the spring twilight. The green of Millennium Park, where tulips bloomed in full glory, was bathed in orange sunset light. Miss Walker, thank you for the excellent proposal. We'll be providing you with a special bonus. The executive of a major developer extended his hand with a broad smile. This single project would increase annual revenue by 20%. The perfect birthday gift had arrived. Executives, one after another, offered their congratulations. Chicago's architectural giants praised her achievements. A once-in-20 years major redevelopment project being named as the chief director would surely mark a new turning point in her career. Returning to her office, she found a small bouquet from her staff on her desk. The combination of white calla lilies and blue delphiniums showed how well they knew her preferences. The card, reading "Happy Birthday, Clara," bore the signatures of all employees. She felt a warmth in her chest. Edward, the chief designer, quietly offered her coffee. "Boss, please leave early today. Enjoy celebrating with your family." Smiling at those words, Clara changed into a navy cocktail dress she had recently purchased from a luxury boutique. The fine designer fabric enhanced her dignified presence. She applied her makeup a bit more carefully than usual and fastened her father's Cartier watch around her wrist. This year might be different. Such hopes swelled slightly in her heart. Driving north on Lakeshore Drive in the twilight, she reminisced about memories with her family before her father passed away. They would always take this road to a downtown restaurant for her birthday. Now, even those memories weren't shared with her mother and sister. As she approached the affluent Winnetka neighborhood, several unfamiliar luxury cars were parked in front of her mother's house. Two of the latest Rolls-Royce Ghosts, a Ferrari Portofino and her stepfather's brand-new Bentley Continental GT. The usually quiet street showed unusual activity tonight. Opening the front door, she could hear lively laughter coming from the living room, lit by baccarat crystal chandeliers. This 1920s historic building embodied her mother's good taste, exuding both classical and modern elegance. The sound of Dom Perignon Rosé champagne being uncorked, high-end French catering by a Michelin-starred chef. From her mother's reception room, she could see relatives dressed in evening gowns. "Everyone, thank you for viewing my new jewelry collection." Her mother, Vivian's, voice rang out with a crystal glass in hand. She wore a broad smile. A custom-made Cartier diamond necklace sparkled in the chandelier light. Beside her, notable society figures offered their congratulations. "Mom, the Instagram livestream is getting such a huge response! Over 500,000 views already!" Brittany was elated, holding the latest iPhone 15 Pro Max. Her dress was apparently a direct shipment from Dior in Paris. As a social media influencer, such glamorous scenes were her specialty. The moment Clara stepped into the living room, conversation briefly stopped. A frozen silence descended for just a moment. "Oh, Clara, you're early today." Her mother wore a slightly confused expression. Clear disgust showed in her eyes. "What's happening here?" To Clara's question, her sister answered lightly, her red Louboutin heels clicking as she gracefully approached. "It's Mom's new jewelry collection debut party." Today was the only day everyone's schedules aligned. Her stepfather, Richard, tilting his crystal glass, added, "Can you handle the party cleanup?" Her mother, wearing a radiant smile, added, "Oh yes, it was your birthday today, wasn't it?" Everyone laughed and raised their champagne glasses. The sound reflected off the crystal chandeliers, echoing endlessly. Not a single person offered birthday wishes to her. Clara quietly climbed the stairs, each step muffled by the thick Persian carpet beneath her feet. Entering her old room, she took a deep breath before reaching for Crane and Company's premium stationery. Her father's keepsake Mont Blanc fountain pen gleamed in the dim light as she grasped it, her fingers trembling slightly. She hesitated for a moment, but then the weight of everything pressed her forward. Fighting back the tears threatening to spill, she began writing. She poured out the truth. the truth about her sister's company mounting deficits, hidden behind the glossy filter of social media perfection, the truth about her mother's real estate dealings, the illegal transactions, and the tax evasion that ran deep in their veins, the truth about her stepfather's investment firm where client funds had been misappropriated for years, and the undeniable truth of how she had been silently supporting the whole facade, keeping their lives from unraveling, even at the cost of her own peace. The words flowed, a raw and aching confession, a record of the countless nights spent maintaining the family's carefully crafted image. When the letter was finished, Clara carefully folded it, placing it in an envelope with the utmost precision. She left it on the living room table, knowing it had the power to dismantle this entire house of lies with the smallest breath of truth. With minimal necessities packed in her Louis Vuitton travel bag, Clara made a reservation at a Michelin-starred restaurant on her phone. The concierge, Elena, responded with professional courtesy. "We have prepared the chef's table for one this evening." Downstairs, the party continued, the sounds of champagne corks popping, the high society laughter that echoed through the rooms, and her sister's voice, still broadcasting her life on Instagram Live. Clara opened the front door, the night breeze cool against her skin. In the luxury of her car, heading south on Michigan Avenue, classical music floated softly from the speakers. She let the calm notes wash over her as she drove, escaping from the glittering charade she had been a part of for so long. Arriving at the restaurant, Michael Moran, the service director, greeted her with a smile that exuded the kind of warmth only a 3-Michelin-starred restaurant could offer. "Let me show you to the chef's table." They ascended the spiral staircase to a private dining room, glass enclosed, offering a panoramic view of Chicago's shimmering night skyline. On the table, pure white linen was elegantly spread, and baccarat crystal glasses sparkled in the chandelier light. Michael's voice carried a warmth that made her feel at ease. "We understand you're dining alone this evening." "Yes, today is my birthday." His expression softened. "Then allow me to suggest a wine worthy of this special evening." The sommelier arrived with a bottle of 1988 Romanée Conti, a wine from Clara's birth year. The deep red liquid sparkled as it was poured, shimmering like a jewel under the light. "1988 was a wonderful year," the sommelier remarked. Clara smiled faintly at the words. Before her father passed, they had always come to this restaurant for her birthday. Back then, her mother remembered her preferences, always ordering chocolate soufflé for dessert. The appetizer arrived a delicate harmony of truffles and caviar. Each plate was a work of art, crafted with care and dedication. "This is a special celebratory dish from the chef," Michael said with pride. Course after course followed, each dish more beautiful than the last, each one a sincere reflection of the chef's heart and effort. But then, her phone vibrated. It was a notification from her sister's Instagram. Clara's finger moved before she could stop it, and the screen displayed a series of photos from the extravagant party downstairs. Her mother's elegant smile, her stepfather raising a glass of champagne, her sister laughing. Only Clara's face was missing from the shots. The comment section flooded with envious voices, praising the lavish event. The contrast between the smiling family on social media and the quiet, intimate dinner table before her felt like a knife to her heart. Yet, strangely, her heart remained calm. "A toast to your birthday," Michael said, pouring Dom Perignon Rosé into her glass. It was the same champagne served at her mother's party, but somehow, in this space, it felt different, more genuine. "Did you know they say champagne bubbles are a sign of happiness?" At those words, Clara's eyes unexpectedly moistened. Warmth from strangers' genuine affection was something she had never received from her own family. The main dish arrived, perfectly cooked A5 Wagyu beef, accompanied by organic vegetables. Clara savored each bite, her senses alive with the beauty of the meal. "Actually," Michael added with a smile, "all the kitchen staff prepared a birthday card for you." He handed her the card, which contained handwritten messages from each staff member, including the chef. The heartfelt wishes from people she had never met stirred something deep within her. Clara's tears, unbidden, fell onto the pristine tablecloth. She had come here to find solace, to escape the pain of her family's disregard, and in the simplest of gestures, a birthday card from strangers, she had found the comfort she had longed for her whole life. Her smartphone vibrated again, this time a notification from her mother's Instagram. Stories of the new jewelry collection debut party were being uploaded one after another. Clara quietly turned off her smartphone. Outside the window, Chicago's night skyline glowed blue. Willis Tower, John Hancock Center, and the new buildings she had helped design all stood quietly, as if watching over her 35 years of life. "I've brought your dessert. It was chocolate souffle." The taste of birthdays once shared with her father gently returned. A birthday song from all the restaurant staff. The moment she received heartfelt wishes from others for the first time, it became her warmest birthday memory yet. "Did you enjoy your special evening?" As she was leaving, Michael smiled kindly. "Yes, it was the best birthday of my life." Getting into her car, she quietly started the engine. At the Sheridan Road mansion, the party was reaching its end. "Brittany, can you call Clara?" Vivian said elegantly, letting her Cartier bracelet sparkle. The kitchen, lined with empty Dom Perignon bottles, was scattered with leftover high-end French catering. "Yes, I'll call her. She's probably working upstairs as usual." Brittany climbed the spiral stairs, her Dior heels clicking. Richard was engrossed in conversation about luxury cars with his investment associates. "Clara, could you help with the cleanup?" Brittany's voice trailed off. No one was in the upstairs hallway. What's wrong?" Vivian came up the stairs, the baccarat chandelier light reflected off her new necklace, creating patterns on the wall. "Jenny's not here." "Well, running away, that's not like her." Just then, their stepfather's voice rang out from the living room. "Vivian, Brittany, come here right now." His tone lacked its usual composure. When the two hurried downstairs, they saw the premium stationery placed on the living room table, letters carefully written with a Mont Blanc fountain pen on Crane and Company's finest paper. It was like a magic spell that would instantly destroy this family's castle of pretense. To Mother, Brittany, and Richard, Vivian's hands trembled. "Until now, I have kept silent to protect the family. However, tonight, while celebrating my 35th birthday alone, I made a decision." Brittany caught her breath. First, regarding Brittany's company, behind the glamorous social media posts, the company's reality is in serious management crisis. "As of today, I am terminating all the secret financial support and client introductions I have been providing." The iPhone fell from Brittany's hands. Her latest post on the screen now seemed a cruel irony. "Next, regarding Mother's real estate company, I have submitted all evidence of fraud and tax evasion in transactions over the past 3 years to the relevant authorities. All the fake transactions conducted under my name will also come to light." The color drained from Vivian's face. Her hands holding the letter began shaking violently. "And regarding Richard's investment company, evidence of client fund misappropriation has already been submitted to the SEC. The truth behind all the documents I've been signing as the nominal responsible party will also be revealed." Her stepfather dropped his whiskey glass. The baccarat crystal shattered on the marble floor. At that moment, Brittany's smartphone began vibrating violently. The screen displayed notifications of rapidly declining follower numbers. Someone had begun exposing the truth behind her posts. Her career as an influencer was crumbling before her eyes. With an audible crash, "My 100,000 followers!" Vivian's phone started ringing too. A call from Chicago's largest real estate brokerage, a cold voice announcing immediate contract termination flowed from the speaker in the study. Richard's private line was ringing. Inquiries from investors were flooding in. The keys to his Bentley slipped from his trembling hands. "This is my final gift to you." The last line of the letter sparkled in the baccarat chandelier light. That night, an unprecedented silence fell over the Sheridan Road mansion. The next morning's Chicago Tribune front page bore the headline, "Fraud Exposed, Shaking Chicago's High Society." Her mother's real estate company received cancellation after cancellation. Long-term clients were all requesting contract terminations at once. The luxury residential area office now bore a sign reading, "Temporarily closed." On her sister's Instagram, followers decreased by tens of thousands within hours. Luxury brands she had promoted announced collaboration contract terminations one after another. Her once glamorous social media account had become an object of ridicule. SEC investigators conducted an on-site inspection of her stepfather's investment company. The media gathered in front of the building, and wealthy clients arriving in luxury cars would likely never return. CNN Breaking News aired news of the glamorous family's downfall in Chicago's social circles spread across the nation in an instant. Her mother's cell phone was flooded with condemning voices from former friends. None of the social circle members who had gathered for weekend brunch parties would answer their phones now. Her sister's credit cards were suspended one after another. Her luxury stay reservation at the Ritz-Carlton was canceled. With her influencer income cut off, her bank account balance visibly dwindled. Her stepfather's investors began withdrawing their funds en masse. His luxury car collection was seized as evidence of illegal fund misappropriation and transported away from the garage one by one. As night fell, the three family members sat dazed in their crumbling castle of pretense. Under the baccarat chandelier, their shadows stretched long. Her mother, still dressed in her luxury brand suit, stared vacantly at her smartphone. Her sister had lost even the will to respond to the flood of criticizing comments on her last Instagram post. Her stepfather merely stared at the ceiling, an empty whiskey bottle before him. At that moment, the butler quietly entered the living room. "Madam, I deeply apologize, but I would like to resign as of today." The words of the butler, who had served this family for many years, broke the silence. Outside, the spring night wind blew through. Their once glamorous lifestyle crumbled silently like a castle built on sand. 1 year later, Ms. Walker, the Forbes interview team is waiting. Emily, her secretary, quietly knocked on the door. She was to be featured on this month's cover as Chicago's most influential woman architect. "How are the preparations for the new projects in Asia?" "Yes, we've received approval from the teams in Singapore, Tokyo, and Shanghai." Over the past year, her firm had achieved remarkable growth. Revenue was up 300% from the previous year. The number of employees had doubled, and the office had expanded to 2 floors. However, the kindness in her eyes remained unchanged. "Are the preparations ready for this weekend's foster care support event?" "Yes, everything is set. 30 children are expected to participate." On her desk sat a photo frame, a picture from the Christmas party at the Foster Care Support Center. Surrounded by smiling children, her expression showed a happiness she had never known before. Meanwhile, in a suburban Chicago apartment, Brittany worked in a small kitchen. Her social media followers had plummeted to a few thousand, and her income as an influencer had completely dried up. Now, she only worked weekends at a local organic cafe. Vivian sat wearily on the sofa, her once luxurious branded clothes now long gone, sold off to second-hand shops to make ends meet. She wore simple outfits bought from local outlets, a stark contrast to the high-end fashion she used to flaunt. Her real estate license had been revoked, and her old connections, those she once relied on, had been completely severed. Her stepfather, Richard, once a man of wealth and influence, was now forced into early retirement. His days were spent in the neighborhood park, playing chess with whoever would join him. His prized Bentley had been seized, and now he drove a used Toyota. Another letter from Jenny. The Crane and Company envelope lay on the living room table, another monthly living expense check that arrived without fail. Though it stung their pride, they couldn't even pay their rent without it. In Clara's office, designer Edward hesitated before speaking. "The Wall Street Journal is requesting an interview about reconciliation between mother and daughter." Clara shook her head slowly. Her desk drawer was full of apologetic letters from her mother, letters that began with, "To my beloved daughter." Yet, despite the words, Clara knew it would take time before they held any real meaning. As dusk fell, Clara walked along Michigan Avenue, the spring tulips blooming just as they had the year before. She had just finished a meeting for a new project on the top floor of the Willis Tower. "Clara!" The voice came from Mary, the director of the Foster Care Support Center. "The children are so excited for the Thanksgiving party." Volunteering at the facility had become Clara's new routine, and spending time with the children there had taught her what family truly meant. "Tomorrow is my 36th birthday," Clara said with a small smile. Mary's face lit up, a warmth spreading through her. "We've prepared a wonderful surprise, together with the children." The next day, the Foster Care Support Center hall was decorated with colorful handmade ornaments. "Happy birthday, Clara!" 30 children ran up to her, holding their own handmade cards. Their smiles, pure and untainted, were worth more than any luxury brand. "We all made the cake," one child exclaimed. "I did the flower decorations," said another. "I chose the candles." The words, so filled with warmth and love, were a gift she never expected. It was a kind of love that didn't ask for anything in return, something her former family could never understand. Her smartphone buzzed with incoming calls from her mother, but Clara chose to ignore them. She wanted to focus on the happiness that surrounded her. "Happy birthday!" A little girl timidly approached. "I'm so happy I met you, Clara." Tears welled up in Clara's eyes, but they weren't tears of sadness. Outside, the spring breeze blew gently, a breath of fresh life sweeping through the city of Chicago. On the top floor of Willis Tower, new project blueprints fluttered in the wind. These were plans for a new foster care facility, a project she had decided to dedicate her architectural talents to. It was a new purpose, one that would shape the future of the children who had become her true family. The night sky, filled with countless stars, seemed to mirror her own transformation. The castle of pretense, the world she had once lived in, now seemed like a distant memory. And before her, a new life filled with real love stretched out, a life she never could have imagined, but one that she had built for herself. Yes, this was true happiness. Clara Walker smiled from the depths of her heart for the first time in years. It was proof of a happiness that money could never buy. In her desk drawer, her mother's apologetic letters still lay unopened. Perhaps someday she would reply. But for now, Clara wanted to cherish the love she had found, the life she had built with her new family, one filled with genuine, unconditional love. What do you do when you finally realize that the love and validation you've been searching for from your family was never meant to be? Do you keep sacrificing, or do you choose yourself and your own happiness? Clara's journey has been one of perseverance, professionalism, and sacrifice. For years, she's built her empire while quietly carrying the weight of her family's expectations. Despite being the head of a successful architectural design firm, her family never truly saw her. Her mother, Vivian, favored her younger sister, Brittany, who spent her time basking in the spotlight while Clara's contributions remained unnoticed. But the moment Clara chose to stop playing along with their facade, everything shifted. When Clara walked away from her mother's lavish birthday celebration and chose a peaceful, solitary dinner at a Michelin-starred restaurant, she made a decision that would change her life. Surrounded by strangers who treated her with the respect and kindness her family never had, Clara realized something profound. True happiness isn't about the recognition or approval of those who don't appreciate you. It's about finding your own worth and living with authenticity. Clara's act of writing the truth about her family's fraudulent dealings wasn't just an act of defiance, it was an act of liberation. She dismantled the very foundation of the life they had carefully built on lies. But it wasn't until she found real love and connection with the children at the foster care center that Clara truly understood what family meant. So, what do you think? Was Clara right to walk away from a family that had never supported her? Or do you think she should have kept trying? Have you ever had to cut ties with someone you thought you couldn't live without? Let's talk about it in the comments. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more.
The warmth of the fireplace did little to chase away the chill that crept down my spine as Marianne's piercing gaze fell upon me. "Well, Avery, dear, I must say that dress is interesting," she said, her ruby-red lips curling into a smile that never reached her eyes. I forced a polite grin, my cheeks flushing. "Thank you, Marianne. It's one of my favorites." "I can see why." Elliot's mother gave a tinkling laugh that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. "So bold and unique, just like you. Although I do wonder if it's quite appropriate for this family dinner." My mouth went dry as I looked at Elliot, silently pleading for him to intervene. But he just stared down at his plate, shoulders tense. "You know how much we value tradition in this household," Marianne continued, her syrupy tone a sharp contrast to the barbs in her words. "We wouldn't want to make anyone uncomfortable." The the room seemed to shrink around me as the rest of the family remained silent observers. My vision blurred with unshed tears that I blinked back furiously. This was supposed to be a warm welcome into the Halden family after my marriage to Elliot. Instead, I felt like an ill-fitting pawn being scrutinized. "Of course, Mother," I choked out. "I'll be more mindful next time." "Wonderful." She clapped her hands together delicately. "Now, why don't you tell us a bit more about yourself, dear? We're just dying to get to know you better." I opened my mouth, but the words stuck in my throat as her cold eyes bored into me. In that moment, I realized this was about more than just my dress choice. This was Marianne establishing her dominance, a chilling power play that left me disoriented. Some distant part of me registered the uncomfortable silence stretching on until Elliot cleared his throat. "Actually, Mother, I think that's enough for tonight. Avery's had a long day." The rabbit hole didn't seem to end as the weeks ticked by in our new home. If anything, Marianne's needling demands only escalated, from explicit instructions on how to properly set the dinner table to casual comments belittling my career ambitions. And Elliot, my once loving husband, simply watched in silence as his mother's barbs chipped away at my sense of self piece by piece. It became a dizzying cycle of appeasing Marianne's every whim, lest I face the consequences of her wrath through icy rebukes or underhanded reminders of how I was an outsider here. But it was the disappointed looks from Elliot that cut deepest, each one another jagged crack spreading across the dream I had for our marriage. In those early days of our new life together, I was drowning, gasping for air in a twisted game I didn't know the rules to, and Marianne seemed determined to keep me unbalanced through her sinister passive aggression, all while wearing a sickly sweet smile, of course, because that was the Halden family way. At first, the changes in Elliot were so subtle, I easily chalked them up to the stress of starting our new life together. A forgotten birthday here, a canceled date night there, small things that I excused as just part of getting into a new groove as newlyweds. But soon, those slight oversights spiraled into something darker, something that made my heart clench every time I saw the disappointment and disdain hardening in his eyes. "This pot roast is dry as a bone," he grumbled one night, jabbing his fork moodily into the meat. "Honestly, Avery, how many times do I have to show you?" I opened my mouth, then snapped it shut as Marianne swept into the dining room. Now, Elliot, that's no way to speak to your wife." Her nostrils flared as she pinned me with an icy stare, although Avery should know better by now. The lump in my throat threatened to choke me as I looked at Elliot pleadingly, desperate for him to defend me like he used to. But he just shrugged, already shoveling another forkful of the dry pot roast into his mouth. That night was only the beginning. Pretty soon, Elliot's callous comments became as commonplace as Marianne's constant critiques of my abilities as a wife and daughter-in-law. He'd track Mud into the house and then snap at me for not anticipating his needs. I'd burn dinner, and he'd throw the plate across the kitchen in a rage. All the while, Marianne watched like a hawk, her curved lips stretching into a satisfied smile every time Elliot willingly played his role. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks one afternoon when I foolishly asked Elliot if he wanted to grab lunch together before his next meeting. "Don't be ridiculous," he scoffed, already shrugging on his suit jacket. "You know Mother prefers I'm back promptly after appointments to discuss business matters." My heart plummeted into my stomach as I watched him hurry out the door, not even a backward glance in my direction. That's when the harsh truth finally clicked into place. Marianne had enveloped us so fully in her twisted web that Elliot was utterly beholden to her every rule. My husband was a shell of his former self, his love for me dulled by years of psychological conditioning at his mother's hand, and I was slowly being suffocated by her ruthless control over our family, gasping for air in a life I no longer recognized. "Oh, Avery, you're pouting again." Marianne's sickly sweet voice rang out from behind me. I spun around, jaw clenched, as she sicked loudly and shook her head. "When will you learn?" In that moment, something inside me twisted and snapped. I could no longer swallow down the bitter truth. If I stayed on this path, Marianne would grind me into the dirt until I was a vacant, submissive shadow of my former self. Just like Elliot. No, that was not the life I wanted. Not for me. Not for anyone. And as I met her cold gaze steadily, a new flame of determination was lit from the dying embers inside me. If Marianne wanted a battle, she would get one, with everything I had, because this time I would be the one calling the shots. The annual Halden Family Charity Gala was supposed to be a lighthearted affair, a chance for the town's elite to mingle and pat themselves on the back over champagne and hors d'oeuvres. But this year would be different. This year, I had a plan. As I descended the staircase in my crisp azure gown, clutching Elliot's arm, I saw Marianne's eyes narrow ever so slightly. Her well-practiced smile wavered just for an instant before settling back into that familiar saccharine mask. "Why, Avery? You clean up nicely," she purred as we reached the bottom of the stairs. "Although I do wish you'd done something a bit more sophisticated with your hair." My grip on Elliot's arm tightened, but he remained stoically impassive, refusing to even look at me, just like I knew he would. The night blazed on in a whirlwind of fake laughter and insincere compliments that made my skin crawl. I smiled woodenly, one hand clutching my champagne flute like a lifeline, as Marianne's barbs continued unchecked. "It really is too bad you never finished your college degree, dear," she said loudly during Aovek, her voice carrying across the crowded ballroom. We Haldens do so value a prestigious education. A hush fell over our little group as I felt dozens of eyes boring into me, awaiting my stuttered excuse like they'd grown accustomed to over the years. But not this time. This time, the anger roaring in my ears drowned out any shred of remaining intimidation. "Actually, Marianne, I seem to recall you dropping out as well," I said coolly, taking a dainty sip of my champagne. "To start a family, was it?" Her perfectly lined lips parted in shock as hushed murmurs began rippling through our audience. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught a glimpse of Elliot's father, Douglas, suppressing a grin before Marianne's voice sliced through the tension again. "Well, I never. You'd do well to watch your tone, young lady," she hissed, color blooming high on her cheeks. "I've half a mind to." "To what, Marianne?" I cut her off, something inside me finally snapping free. "Continue your sad attempts to belittle and control me? Save your breath, because I'm simply done playing your twisted little games." I leveled my gaze at Elliot, who shrank back, a deer in the headlights. "Or has your mother not told you about her plans to remove me from your lives? To wipe me from the picture completely so she can find you a more suitable bride to further the Halden legacy?" An icy silence hung in the air, punctuated only by Marianne's ragged breathing as her mask shattered completely. I could taste the fear rolling off her in dizzying waves, smell the acrid stench of her desperation. The crowd seemed to sway around me as I looked from Elliot's pale, stricken face to Marianne, and then to Douglas, the first inkling of hope in his eyes for longer than I could remember. With a sickening lurch, the weight of my entrapment these past few years finally hit me like a physical blow. The lies, the belittling, the silent torment, all at the hands of this vile woman and her puppet of a son. Something inside me finally broke free as the last threads of fear dissolved away, replaced by a calmness I hadn't felt in years. A foreign power seemed to uncurl within me, urging me not to flee this time, but to stand my ground. To fight. The whispers were growing louder now, but I barely heard them over the roaring in my ears as I tossed back the last of my champagne and smiled at Marianne. "No, I'm afraid the games are just beginning." The deafening silence that followed my outburst at the gala was finally broken by the harsh clack of Marianne's heels as she stormed away, her face twisted into a mask of rage. Elliot trailed after her, throwing me one last haunted look before disappearing into the crowd. I stood rooted to the spot, my heart thundering in my ears as the world slowly bled back into focus. Hushed whispers and scandalized gasps swirled around me, but I barely registered them over the chorus of voices in my mind. What had I done? After years of keeping my head down, something had snapped inside of me in that heated moment. An overwhelming urge to shatter the heavy silence, to unravel this twisted tapestry Marianne had woven around our family. Trembling, I turned to Douglas, the first man I'd ever seen stand up to his domineering wife. He placed a wizened hand on my arm, his eyes shining with the first hint of resolve I'd witnessed in years. "You did the right thing, Avery," he murmured gruffly. "The truth had to come out, no matter how ugly." His earnest words should have been a balm, helping ease the searing guilt and shock pulsing through my veins. But they did little to chase away the nagging sense of dread coiling in the pit of my stomach, because I knew this was only the beginning. My grand public outburst may have rattled Marianne's cage, but the real fallout was yet to come. She would retaliate, of that I was certain, which meant I needed to be prepared to fight back with everything I had. That realization was what finally spurred me into action over the next few days, as the harsh condemnations and scandalized whispers engulfed our family. While Elliot holed up in his study in a drunken stupor, I began to gather what little evidence I could. Damning financial statements, detailing the misappropriation of Halden family funds, sworn affidavits from Marianne's hired staff recounting her unhinged verbal tirades, a trove of secret recordings spanning years, each one more incriminating than the last. I compiled my case meticulously, letting the smoldering embers of my anger drive me forward as I prepared for the battle to come. Because one thing had become painfully clear. Marianne would stop at nothing to regain control over her kingdom, and I would be her prime target. The breaking point came one night after another of Elliot's inevitable blow-ups, his voice hoarse from screaming about the humiliation I'd brought upon this family. I had hidden in the pantry, my breath coming in raggedy pants as his venomous words hit their mark again and again, until finally I heard the telltale click of Marianne's heels against the hardwood and the murmur of their hushed conversation filtering through the cracked door. "Get rid of her." Marianne's low, steely voice made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. "She's become much too unruly, much too dangerous to our family's interests." Unable to contain myself a moment longer, I leaned in closer until their poisonous whispers became clear as day. And that's when I heard the evidence I'd been subconsciously seeking all along. The final, damning confession that any shed of humanity had long been snuffed out in this family. The gloves were off. The time for playing Marianne's twisted games was over, because now it was my turn to fight fire with fire. As the whispered threats from Marianne and Elliot's hushed confession echoed in my mind, a strange calmness washed over me. No more walking on eggshells, no more forcing smiles as I was pecked apart from the inside. This was war, and I would be ready. The next morning, I awoke before dawn and quietly slipped out of the house before Elliot or Marianne could stir. My footsteps were the only sound on the deserted downtown streets as I made my way to the one place I knew I could find allies, Everly's Diner. The tinkling of the bell above the door was like a soothing balm as the familiar scents of bacon and freshly brewed coffee enveloped me. This place had been my haven in those first few strained years of marriage, when I could still escape Marianne's clutches for a few blessed hours. "Well, if it isn't my favorite customer!" Janice, the owner, emerged from the kitchen, a hesitant smile playing across her lips, as she took in my undoubtedly haggard appearance. "Rough night, hon? You could say that." The words were already tumbling out before I could stop them. The revelations at the gala, the whispered threats, my finally reaching the breaking point. As I spilled everything, I watched Janice's eyes widen, one wrinkled hand flying to cover her mouth. "Oh, darlin', I always knew that woman was nothin' but a snake," she muttered, shaking her head slowly. "But to go that far, to actually try hurting you like that, that's a new low, even for her." An unexpected surge of relief coursed through me at her words, as if finally hearing someone else validate my pain and experiences made it all just a little more bearable. I opened my mouth, about to try explaining myself further when the bell above the door jangled again. "There you are." A familiar voice rang out as Lila, my best friend from college, rushed over and enveloped me in a bone-crushing hug. Janice called and told me everything. "Avery, I'm so sorry I wasn't there for you all this time. If I'd known what was really going on." Her voice cracked with emotion, and I instinctively tightened my arms around her. Lila had been the closest thing to family I had in those first few years of my marriage before Marianne's isolating tactics finally pushed her away. "You're here now," I murmured, forcing a watery smile as she finally pulled back. "That's what matters." "Damn straight." Lila swiped away the tears trickling down her cheeks before squaring her shoulders determinedly. "So what's the plan, Av? How can I help take that bitch down?" My lips twitched in a real smile this time at the fierce protectiveness blazing in her eyes. Because that's exactly what I needed now, someone with claws out who was ready to fight. Well, for starters, I need to gather more evidence, I began, the gears in my mind already turning. Anything I can use to expose Marianne and get these people off my back once and for all. I was thinking... You were thinking it's time to play a little hardball. A new voice cut me off. I turned to see Charlie, my friend Lila's older brother, and a hotshot corporate lawyer, sweeping into the diner. A slow grin spread across his face as he took in my questioning look. Leela called me from the road, he explained with a shrug. Said my brilliant college pal was finally ready to stand up for herself. So, he rubbed his hands together, what kind of trouble are we stirring up? As I laid out the pieces I'd gathered so far, I could feel the weight temporarily lifting from my shoulders. For the first time in years, I wasn't alone in this fight. I finally had people, friends, in my corner who were ready to go to battle. No more passive silence, no more turning the other cheek as Marianne and her minions sought to drown me. This time, I would be the one putting up a fight. This time, the predators would become the prey. The next few weeks flew by in a whirlwind of clandestine meetings and furtive evidence gathering as Lila, Charlie, and I built an airtight case against Marianne and her web of deceit. Papers were meticulously organized into binders. Undercover surveillance captured hushed confrontations and damning admissions. A steely sense of determination took root inside me, unfurling with each incriminating piece we unearthed. By the time the annual Halden Hospitality Charity Gala arrived, I could feel the palpable tension thrumming through my veins. This would be the moment of truth, the culmination of weeks of secret planning, my chance to cut through the smothering silence once and for all. "You've got this, Lila murmured as we did final checks in the courthouse bathroom. Her fingers deftly fluffed my hair as her gaze met mine in the mirror, a silent message passing between us. No more fear, no more games. When we emerged into the marbled lobby a few minutes later, the gilded ballroom was already buzzing with Woodbrook's elite in their tuxedoed finery. Champagne flutes glinted under the soft candlelight as mingled laughter and chatter filled the air. I could feel hundreds of eyes trailing over me as I deliberately wove through the crowd, clutching the overflowing case binder to my chest like a shield. A hush seemed to fell over the crowd with each step, until finally I reached the center of the polished dance floor. "Good evening, everyone," I said in a clear, ringing voice, flashing them all a brilliant smile. "I'd like to take a moment to celebrate the generous philanthropists in our community who have gone to such great lengths to give back." A smattering of hesitant applause followed along with a few bewildered looks. Out of the corner of my eye, I watched Marianne stiffen, the color draining from her perfectly made-up face. "Of course," I continued lightly, "there are a few individuals here tonight who have been rather generous with their philanthropy, shall we say." As I spoke, I deposited the binder on a nearby table with a dull thud and began paging through the damning evidence. Embezzling funds from local charities and family trusts to fuel lavish lifestyles and keep up appearances, betraying the trust and confidence of those who believed in their philanthropic integrity. My voice remained maddeningly calm, even as Marianne's face contorted with rage and panic flickered in Elliot's eyes. As more and more details tumbled from my lips, a deafening silence fell over the crowd, broken only by the flutter of papers and my inexorable narration. "Then, of course, we have the less legal dalliances to account for as well." I leveled my gaze squarely at Elliot now, holding up glossy photographic proof of his indiscretions for all to see. Cavorting with strange women, deceiving his faithful wife, all while hiding behind this thin veneer of community-minded chivalry. The hushed gasps of shock seemed to reverberate against the vaulted ceilings now, shattered only by the guttural scream that finally tore free from Marianne's throat. Wild-eyed and trembling, she looked every bit the caged animal as security began closing in from all sides. In that crystalline moment of reckoning, I could see the final shreds of her meticulously constructed facade disintegrating into ash right before me. There would be no more lies, no more manipulations under the guise of propriety. For the first time since she'd callously destroyed my naive dreams of familial belonging all those years ago, I felt a savage sense of victory coursing through my veins unfettered. The karmic wheel had finally turned, and Marianne was powerless to stop it. As two burly guards moved to apprehend her, Marianne's gaze found mine one final time, feral and burning with hatred. But this time her venom held no power, sliding harmlessly away as the last of the fear dissolved inside me, because in that moment I was the master of her supposed checkmate. The thunderous silence that followed Marianne's dramatic arrest seemed to stretch into eternity. I could taste the collective shock and disbelief like a palpable force as the once venerable Halden family imploded before their eyes. For a fleeting moment, Elliot and I locked gazes across the ballroom floor. His expression was utterly inscrutable, eyes hollow and glazed as twin trails of moisture streaked his ashen cheeks. Then, just as quickly as the spell had woven between us, it shattered, splintering into 1,000 unspoken recriminations and shards of dashed hopes. Elliot's jaw hardened and he turned on his heel, retreating into the claustrophobic crowd as if I were the villain here, as if I had been the jackal systematically stripping our family apart, piece by piece. The bitter taste of defeat nearly choked me until a warm hand came to rest on my shoulder. I turned to see Douglas, the shrunken shell of a man suddenly seeming decades older than his years. "You did what you had to do," he murmured, his words barely audible over the rising din of panicked murmuring. "She left you no choice." A knot I didn't realize I'd been carrying seemed to loosen ever so slightly at his reassurance. For so long, he had been just another one of Marianne's puppets, helpless against the manipulations of his monstrous wife. But now, in the wake of this cataclysmic shake-up, I could see the first faint flickers of hope rekindling in his rheumy eyes. The iron manacles were finally loosening. "For what it's worth, I'm sorrier than you'll ever know," Douglas continued hoarsely, gnarled fingers tightening around my arm in a vice grip. Marianne, she was always the strong one, the immovable force, and I let myself become malleable, too cowed to ever stand up to her toxic ways until it was far too late. His throat bobbed as he swallowed hard, face etched with regret. "You didn't deserve any of what she put you through, Avery. But maybe now, maybe there's a chance to start fresh." I could only nod numbly, too overwhelmed to find any words of forgiveness or comfort. Because in that moment, surrounded by the wreckage of his shattered legacy, Douglas was beyond consoling. No, there would be no easy path forward now, not for any of us. The Halden family as we'd known it was irreparably broken, the bedrock foundation built on lies and deceit. As the gaping crowd parted like the Red Sea, Marianne reappeared between her two hulking security escorts. No longer the impeccably coiffed ice queen, her coppery hair askew and mascara streaking her crimson cheeks in muddy rivulets. But her slate eyes still gleamed with that familiar vindictive light as they bored into me. "You ungrateful, malicious little cur," she spat, the haunting words cutting through the silent ballroom. "After everything I sacrificed for this family, gave you people so you could keep living in your pathetic delusions of grandeur." One of the guards made a move to silence her, but Marianne merely wrenched free, her lips peeling back in a manic snarl. "Don't think this is over. You hear me, Avery? I'll make you regret the day you ever set foot in this town and tried to sully the Halden name." Her vicious threats hung in the air like a dark miasma as I watched the sad, broken remnants of her once imperious persona be dragged away. No, this was far from over, I realized with a chill. Marianne's stubborn claws would remain sunk in deep, poisoning any chance at peaceful resolution until her dying breath. As the ballroom seemed to gradually swirl back into motion around me, the first tangled threads of uncertainty began weaving their way through my momentary vindication. Because one thing had become resoundingly clear, there would be no clean slates here. No easy path to redemption or letting go of the past. Not when it came to the deep, soul-scarring rift Marianne had rent into our fractured family. The only path forward now was to finish what I'd started, no matter how ugly the finale. The months following the cataclysmic unraveling of the Halden family legacy were a cyclonic blur. Attorneys, court appearances, endless hearings, it all bled together into a surreal waking dream as I weathered the fallout. True to her malicious vow, Marianne fought tooth and nail against the charges, her snarling defiance echoing through oak-paneled courtrooms like the unrelenting screeches of a wild animal. Evidence be damned, she seemed determined to drag us all down into her scorched earth spiral of destruction before finally admitting defeat. But in the end, the truth proved insurmountable. The house of lies she'd so meticulously constructed came crumbling down in an avalanche of convictions and seized assets. I could only look on in muted triumph as the once untouchable Marianne Halden was led away in shackles, her raging accusations buried under the weight of her own hubris. For Elliot, there could be no easy escape from his silent complicity either. Faced with his own damning trail of evidence, adulterous entanglements, misused funds, illegal business dealings, my husband eventually accepted a plea deal. His sentence was lighter than his mother's, but the cost was steep nonetheless. Public humiliation, hefty fines, and a lifetime of untangling his father's ravaged business affairs. As for Douglas, the tragic patriarch displayed a weariness that went far beyond his years as the curtain closed on this ugliest of family dramas. He retreated from the prying eyes of the community, content to quietly pick up the pieces of his shattered empire alone. Well, not entirely alone, for in a gesture I never could have foreseen, he summoned me to his study one rain-swept evening with an unexpected offering, a shocking sum of restitution and an even more stunning apology. You never deserved the venom my wife unleashed, nor my own cowardice in enabling her toxic behavior, he rasped, calloused fingers caressing a worn photograph of family happier times. But I hope this can be a step towards making amends for the suffering you endured on my watch. I opened my mouth to protest, but Douglas raised a withered hand, his eyes shimmering with a fragile hope. Take it, Avery. For once in your life, take something you never had to fight tooth and nail for. Build yourself a legacy untainted by the rot of this family. His gruff words should have felt like a balm after such harrowing turmoil. And yet, as I accepted the oversized check with trembling hands, my heart felt strangely hollow, because no amount of reckoning or restitution could ever absolve the scars that had been carved into my soul by this once revered family. Those wounds would never fully heal, I realized with a pang of melancholy. Even now, stripped of their wealth and clout, the Haldens maintained an invisible hold over me, their ghosts lingering in the farthest reaches of my psyche, like insidious wraiths. But rather than allowing their toxic legacy to tighten around me once more, I would take Douglas's offering and finally forge my own path forward. So as the weeks and seasons gradually shifted once more, I did just that. Carefully channeling the still smoldering embers of anger simmering within, I began investing and planning, slowly, meticulously building my own empire from the ashes of the old. It started small, just a little community arts program for underprivileged youth that had been a lifelong dream. Then, as my nest egg blossomed into more ambitious ventures, the initiatives multiplied. Before long, I was able to establish a formidable foundation in my own name, dedicated to empowering women who had faced abuse and marginalization at the hands of toxic power structures. With every new achievement and hard-won victory, I could feel the icy grip of the past gradually loosening its hold over my battered soul, the all-consuming rage and thirst for vengeance slowly giving way to a renewed sense of purpose and strength from within. It would be naive to think the scars could ever fully fade, that the haunting specter of Marianne's abuse wouldn't still linger in the darkest recesses of my heart, appearing in my most vulnerable moments like a malevolent phantasm. But now, finally, I had reclaimed the power to exorcise those demons in whatever form they took. The cycle of toxicity had been broken once and for all, replaced by the first blushes of a new day. A day where I was no longer just surviving, but finally thriving, as the master of my own rebirth. The jarring ring of my cell phone startled me from my mundane afternoon. I fumbled to grab it from the coffee table, nearly spilling my lukewarm tea. "Hello?" I answered cautiously. The voice on the other end was one I never expected to hear again. My ex-mother-in-law, Edna. "Cassie, it's time." Her stern tone gave me chills. "How could you think of missing Silas's funeral?" I froze in disbelief. Silas, my high school sweetheart turned ex-husband, had died over a year ago, lost in a tragic car accident, At least, that was what Edna had told me herself in her last bitter phone call. Wait, what? I stammered. I don't understand. Silas already. Edna cut me off sharply. Don't play dumb. The service is tomorrow at St. Mary's. My pulse pounded as I struggled to make sense of her words. St. Mary's, where Silas and I had married 13 years ago. Edna, you told me Silas died last January, I insisted, my voice shaking. You said you blamed me. And he did, she snapped. But now he's passed again. Don't tell me you plan on disrespecting my boy by not showing up. The line went dead before I could respond. I sat paralyzed, my 4-year-old son Eli's laughter from the next room barely registering through the fog clouding my mind. Somehow in my gut, I knew Edna's call was no cruel prank. I grabbed my laptop with trembling hands, quickly typing Silas's name into the search bar. An obituary stared back at me from the glowing screen. My handsome ex-husband, frozen forever at age 32. Yesterday's date marked the finality of it in black and white. Silas was truly gone. But how? None of this made any sense. I skimmed the details of the tribute through vision blurred by tears. A tragic construction accident, survived by his wife Marcella and their infant son. Marcella. Her name jolted me as my shock morphed to anger. The woman Silas had left me for when I was pregnant with Eli. The woman who had swooped in to take my place. I shoved back the bitter memories threatening to overwhelm me. Marcella was far in my past now, just like Silas. But this funeral brought everything roaring back. Grabbing Eli's hand, I resolutely led him out the door to my car. I had to know what kind of sick game was being played here. And I refused to let Eli's rightful place be erased by the woman who had already taken so much from us. St. Mary's loomed before me more foreboding than I remembered as I marched towards it. Eli's little hand nestled securely in my grip. I did not know what I would discover inside about Silas's supposed double death, but I knew one thing for certain. I would protect my son and the truth at all costs. The pews of St. Mary's were packed, stifling even, yet an almost eerie silence still hung in the incense-filled air. I clutched Eli close as I made my way to the front, ignoring the glares and whispers cutting through me with each step. I held my breath, bracing myself for my first glimpse at the photos adorning Silas's closed casket. Sure enough, the images chilled me to my core as we approached. Smiling portraits encircled elaborate bouquets and candles, a vibrant Silas frozen in time forever at 32 years old, exactly as the recent obituary had depicted him. My gaze turned towards the largest portrait, which featured Silas embracing a woman with flowing blonde hair and a cunning smile, Marcella. Underneath it sat a makeshift playpen where Marcella's infant son kicked and cooed, oblivious to the morbid day marking his father's death. I had just bent down instinctively to soothe the crying baby when a cold hand grasped my arm. "Who do you think you're fooling?" A harsh voice spat as I spun around. I stared into the soulless gray eyes of Marcella herself, still clutching the child to her hip with a painted claw. "Get away from my son." Anger swelled within me. This fraud, raising Silas's boy, playing the role of the pretty young widow to milk this for all it was worth, it was revolting. "Didn't expect to see the ex-wife, now did you?" I seethed back, letting my contempt show. "Oh, and congratulations on the supposed tragic accident." Blood drained from Marcella's face. "Why, you little—" She sputtered, composing herself as mourners glanced our way. Her expression transformed to a well-practiced pout as she dabbed mock tears and sauntered towards the open casket. I watched with disgust as Marcella embraced Silas' parents, her sniffles loud in the pin-drop silence. Even now, her only concern was maintaining appearances for the sake of their fortune and estate. So blinded by greed that they actually believed her lies and supported this gold digger next to their only son's grave. A small hand in mine reminded me this show was not my concern anymore. I had my own flesh and blood to protect and promises to keep. The thought fueled me as I turned my back on Marcella's performance, with a resolve colder than the ice in her glare when she cried on their shoulders. She would not get away with this act of manipulation, and she would certainly never lay her claws on what was meant for Eli. Over the sobs, the priest invited us to view Silas one final time. With one last glance at Eli, we slowly approached the casket, flanked by flashy floral tributes like misplaced trophies. Lying inside, Silas looked hollow, almost diminished. a shell of the bright and vibrant soul I had once called mine. Never forget that truth prevails over deception, no matter how wicked, I whispered softly to Eli as I squeezed his shoulder. As we left Silas to whatever peace death would bring him, I vowed we would uncover what Marcella so desperately wanted hidden behind her web of lies. The funeral took every ounce of my energy. As we exited the suffocating church, I knew uncovering Marcella's deceit was now non-negotiable. I asked my neighbor Holly, Eli's godmother, to watch him for a bit. Then I headed downtown, my heels clicking on the pavement with purpose as Silas's law firm came into view. I didn't have an appointment, but my determination must have shown. Before I could even open my mouth, his former assistant Julia embraced me in a tight hug. "Cassie? I can't believe it," she said, dabbing her eyes delicately with a monogrammed handkerchief. "First the accident, now this?" My ears perked up, senses on high alert. "Accident?" I asked. "You mean when he passed before?" Julia nodded, confusion knitting her brows. "Yes, last year. The awful car wreck out on River Road. I assumed you knew. They brought his body in and—" She trailed off with a shudder. The puzzle pieces clicked into place. There had been no tragic construction accident like Marcella declared, which meant she deliberately kept Silas's first death from me, allowing her to stage this second funeral circus under the guise of recent widowhood. Bile rose in my throat as the ugliness of her ploy came into sharp focus. By hiding Silas's initial passing, she ensured the steady flow of child support she orchestrated from my account for Eli right into her scheming hands. I thought I was providing for my boy, but in reality, that witch likely used every cent to fund her plush new lifestyle. As fury and disgust overwhelmed me, I managed to choke out the other burning question. "The baby, is he really Silas's?" Julia shook her head before lowering her voice to barely a whisper. "Rumor has it they were already separated when she got pregnant, but once Silas passed, she saw her opportunity." I reeled at this, the final crushing blow. In addition to using my son, this harpy had trapped my ex-in-laws with the ultimate manipulation, a motherless grandchild to dote on. Even in death, she ensured Silas's fortune would fund her through the boy's college years and beyond. Meanwhile, she attempted to erase my Eli completely, threatening his only connection to Silas's family and inheritance. Overcome with anger, I stormed out of the office, nearly knocking over a vase of lilies sent in loving memory of Silicon Valley's most ambitious lawyer. As I arrived on Marcella's manicured block, I felt containing my rage would be impossible. Sure enough, the sight of her smug smile enraged me as she rocked on the front porch with the baby nestled against her. Not today, witch, I thought. The next hour was a satisfying blur of unleashed fury as I confronted her with all I had learned. With each newly exposed truth, I relished the growing panic in her eyes. Her defeat was palpable, as I declared I would be filing a lawsuit first thing Monday morning to settle this injustice once and for all. "You can slither back into whatever hole you crawled from now," I spat as I turned to leave. "You'll never see another dime meant for my son." I walked away with strides full of renewed purpose. For justice, for Eli's legacy, and for the truth Silas deserved. This victory left the sweet taste of revenge on my lips at last. And tomorrow, the real fight would begin. I arrived at the lawyer's office fueled by caffeinated determination, clutching folders full of paperwork I had gathered over the weekend. Bank statements, legal documents, Marcella's venomous threats. I was armed and ready for battle. The meeting started smoothly as I recounted my discoveries. The lawyer, Mr. Silverstein, listened thoughtfully, periodically adjusting his thin-rimmed glasses. Finally, he cleared his throat and leaned forward. "While these revelations about Marcella's past schemes are certainly concerning, without concrete evidence of current illegal activities, I'm afraid there's little ground for a case," he said gently. My eager smile faded. What? She manipulated a dead man's estate for her own gain. I slid the threatening SMS messages across his desk. "And she's clearly planning to deny my son his rightful inheritance." Mr. Silverstein grimaced as he perused Marcella's texts, gloating about securing power of attorney. "While distasteful, her actions appear strategically within legal bounds," he said. "Since you never married, your son's claim—" I cut him off, unable to contain my boiling frustration. "So this witch can flaunt her schemes and lies, but I'm just supposed to sit and wait for her next underhanded attack?" Sighing, Mr. Silverstein removed his glasses, rubbing his tired eyes. Without proof of actual fraud, we have no grounds for legal action. My best advice would be to wait it out. I slammed my hands on the desk, trembling with anger as I rose. Unacceptable. My son's future is at stake thanks to that soulless, money-grubbing... A knock interrupted my tirade. The door creaked open to reveal Julia, her eyes wide with shock. Sorry to interrupt, but Cassie, you must come quickly. Julia cried breathlessly. I just overheard Marcella on the phone with a strange man. They mentioned documents, custody. My heart seized in my chest. Marcella was already striking with her next scheme. I grabbed my bag, my mind reeling. Did you hear anything else? I asked. Julia shook her head apologetically. As we turned to rush out, Mr. Silverstein handed me a business card. Call me immediately if you uncover solid evidence of wrongdoing, he instructed firmly. With concrete proof, we can build a case. We sped back to Julia's office, where she recounted the bits of conversation she had overheard. As she mimicked the man's slimy tone, bragging about eliminating obstacles, my blood ran cold. This was beyond manipulation. Marcella had crossed over into criminality, and my son was the intended target. We had to catch her red-handed and fast. As Julia made calls checking databases, reality sank in. My days of civility were over. I had to stop reacting and take action. For Eli's sake, it was time to set the trap and play dirty. The pieces clicked into place with chilling precision. Bank statements I had discovered showed large, frequent transfers to a business associate named Derek. A quick online search of his profile made his line of work clear. And baiting this snake out of hiding would surely expose Marcella right along with him. As I plotted out the trap, adrenaline flooded my veins. By weaponizing Marcella's own ugly tactics against her, I would finally take back control. For the sake of Eli's future, her cruelty would be repaid in kind at last. This ended now. The annual Silicon Valley Law Gala was the perfect backdrop for my trap. I had discovered Marcella would be here tonight schmoozing potential investors for her new lifestyle brand. Bile rose in my throat, imagining her peddling leggings and false widowhood in the same breath. Well, not anymore. Tonight her lies would be exposed for the world to see. I had chosen my bait carefully, luring the ominous Derek to a shadowy rendezvous with the promise of a payoff. My eyewitness waited strategically behind a marble column, ready to catch every incriminating exchange on video. All that remained was springing the confrontation I had planned, so Marcella's facade would come crumbling down in front of the cream of the crop attendees. I spotted her across the ballroom, draped in an ostentatious black dress, already working the room with dramatic flair. Time to steal the spotlight, I thought, striding towards her, with rage burning through my veins. "Why, Cassie, what a surprise!" Marcella drawled, her expression morphing from warm charm to icy hatred in an instant. "I'm terribly sorry, but this is a private event. Now run along." The circle of executives glanced between us, curiosity piqued by the palpable tension. Perfect. Private event, I scoffed. More like hunting ground for your next victim right under the guise of entrepreneurship? Have you handed out catalogs showcasing your full web of lies yet? Flashes of anger and fear crossed Marcella's face. "Why, I never. Someone escort this mad woman out at once." But her feigned outrage merely made me laugh. "Come now, Marcy, why don't you share with these kind folks how you conned my grieving ex-in-laws?" I swept my arm towards the captive audience, leverage exactly as I had planned. "Tell them how you seduced my husband away and then faked widowhood twice over for access to his millions." The watching crowd murmured uncomfortably. Before Marcella could respond, her cell phone rang. With trembling hands she answered, breathless fear filling her eyes as she listened. After a long pause, she choked out, "You told me this would work, that no one would ever find out." I grinned wickedly, crossing my arms. "Trouble with your partners in crime, I take it?" Marcella stared at me wild-eyed as I continued. "Did you really think we wouldn't uncover your shady plans with that brute Derek to steal my son's inheritance?" Right on cue, Julia stepped forward, clutching her phone, still recording Derek's incriminating exchange. "We have it all right here," Julia declared. "Your threats, lies, and hired thugs caught discussing falsifying custody documents." Marcella collapsed to her knees as her world crumbled around her, the damning evidence now on full display for all to witness at last. I leaned down, my tone icy. "Your games end here. You knew exactly what you stood to gain from my family's loss, and you didn't care who you destroyed in the process. Well, now the spotlight is on you." Satisfaction washed over me seeing her cowering and exposed. As security approached, Marcella searched the crowd, desperately seeking an ally, but she found only looks of disgust reflecting back at her. The bitter taste of retribution was even sweeter than I imagined. Finally, I had justice for Eli, for Silas's legacy, and above all, for the truth. Marcella's web of deception lay in ruins all around her. Now it was her turn to lose everything, and I would ensure she answered for her crimes if it was the last thing I did. The weeks following Marcella's public shaming blended together in a flurry of legal motions and strategy sessions. With evidence of her shady dealings now on full display, the battle had shifted to the courtroom. I sat calmly smoothing my dress suit as Mr. Leah Silverstein paced, reviewing our plan of attack. With the video footage clearly implicating Derek, Marcella's remaining credibility is questionable at best, he affirmed. Our case highlighting her deceit around Silas's estate and inheritance rights is quite strong. I nodded, steeling myself as we entered the imposing courtroom. Marcella sat at the defendant's table, the hollows of her cheeks betraying her normally glamorous visage. Her bloodshot eyes narrowed to slits as I held her glare with steely determination. The fantasies of my victory had kept me energized throughout sleepless nights. Today, sweet justice would finally be served. The room fell silent as the judge entered. For 3 tense hours, Mr. Silverstein presented an impenetrable wall of evidence showcasing every manipulating half-truth and bold-faced lie Marcella had spun to profit off Silas's tragic death. Phone records proved her secrecy around his actual passing. Bank statements exposed money funneled from my personal accounts straight into her pockets, and most damning, Derek's own written testimonial implicated Marcella as the true mastermind behind the plot to erase my son's claim. I watched Marcella's haughty facade slowly crack and crumble as the weight of truth exposed her deceit. As Mr. Silverstein turned the floor over to her, she sat frozen for a long minute before stammering weakly in self-defense. But her sputtering lies stood no chance now. She had no choice but to confess haltingly to concealing Silas's initial death. A gasp rippled through the gallery at this admission. When pressed about her motivation by the judge, Marcella dissolved into hysterical sobs about debts and bad investments. My lip curled in disgust, hearing her still make excuses rather than take accountability. After she composed her sniveling, the judge turned to Mr. Silverstein. "In lieu of this compelling evidence, I am prepared to rule on the matter of Silas Gray's estate and inheritance rights. Please approach." This was it, the moment that had kept me fighting through countless ruthless attacks. Marcella paled as we stood next to her, awaiting the verdict that would decide my son's fate. On the matter of Silas Gray's estate, full rights shall be granted to his named next of kin, his son Elijah. My breath caught as joyful shock washed over me. Additionally, Miss Marcella Pierce will hereby repay all misallocated funds and forfeit any custody claim over the child. I blinked back grateful tears as justice rained down at long last, stripping the woman who had taken so much from my son for her own gain. The rest was a dizzying rush of celebratory hugs and phone calls to Eli, who giggled gleefully at the news. Meanwhile, Marcella sat frozen, the judge's gavel signaling her defeat. I watched as bailiffs approached to apprehend her on formal fraud charges tied to years of financial deception. As they led her shambling body past me, I stood tall, finally seeing her for the powerless coward she was, without her web of lies for protection. "You forget who you were dealing with," I said coldly. "Did you really think you could threaten my child, Silas's child, without consequence?" As she disappeared from view for good, I let the sweet taste of revenge wash over me at last. With her poisonous shadow now banished from our lives forever, Eli and I could finally embrace the bright future that was rightfully his. Justice indeed prevailed. In the weeks following the trial, I was able to breathe freely for the first time in years. Marcella was sentenced to 3 years behind bars, a satisfactory reckoning for the havoc she had wreaked on countless lives. The duty of tying up legal loose ends around Silas's estate fell to my trusted advisor, Julia. As we sat signing paperwork, joy overwhelmed me seeing Eli's inheritance fully secured at last by his rightful guardians, Silas's parents Edna and Richard. A soft knock interrupted us. Edna entered, her usual haughty aura replaced by something resembling humility. "Cassie, I can't thank you enough for what you did," she said haltingly. Richard nodded behind her, his eyes glistening. "We were so blinded. We never imagined Marcella was manipulating us that entire time." I studied their faces intently. The past could never be erased, but perhaps this ordeal had opened their eyes to what mattered most now: family. I reached across the table and squeezed Edna's hand gently. "Let's focus on the future for Eli's sake." Richard and Edna both smiled through tears. For all our rocky history, we shared an unexpected bond now as guardians of Silas's legacy. Over lunch, we laughed, reminiscing about a young, vibrant Silas, the man we all loved in different ways. Edna even shared baby pictures I had never seen before. A warmth filled me, realizing that perhaps some good could come from even the darkest storms. Later at home, while tucking Eli into bed, I decided to share part of the story that had led us here. I told an age-appropriate version, not mentioning Marcella by name but focusing on themes of honesty, family, and karma. His big brown eyes widened with childlike awe as I spoke. "So that mean Lady lied? Is that why you had to go fight the bad guys in court?" I kissed Eli on the forehead, my heart swelling with pride. "Yes, my smart boy, but now the truth came out, just like it always does, and that mean Lady can't ever bother us again." Eli giggled and squeezed his stuffed dog, the one Silas had given him years ago. "Well, I'm glad, 'cause now we get to stay with Grandma and Grandpa and inherit Daddy's big building downtown." I had to laugh at his innocent understanding of the legal complexity, but in his eyes shone the optimism and hope I had fought so hard to protect. Over the next year, life took on a beautiful rhythm I had scarcely allowed myself to imagine. Weekday breakfasts with Grandma and Grandpa, Sunday picnics reminiscing about Silas while Eli played, laughter, joy, and new memories bonding us together after so much loss. The only dark cloud still lingering was my regular visit to a maximum security prison to stare Marcella down as she crumbled mentally and physically under the weight of her crimes. To some it may have seemed cruel satisfaction, but having her fate sealed behind those unforgiving walls gave me peace of mind. Soon the anniversary of Silas's death arrived, a bittersweet milestone, marking the closing of a painful chapter. We gathered as a family at his grave, each placing a rose while Eli babbled happily about his daddy. I gasped as Eli suddenly froze, pointing behind us all starry-eyed. "Look, it's Daddy," he squealed. "Hi, Daddy." We all turned with a start, seeing nothing but a glowing sunbeam breaking through the clouds. But somehow, I knew in that moment, Silas's spirit swirled around us, and through Eli's eyes, he witnessed the justice, closure, and family his memory deserved. Finally, we could all rest peacefully, thanks to the truth rising at last. The past was finally laid to rest on this sacred ground. Another year slipped by, filled with healing and closure. Our family grew closer than I ever could have imagined. Eli flourished with the love and support of two doting grandparents, and I found meaning embracing my role protecting Silas's legacy. But lingering darkness still occupied my thoughts. Marcella deserved to rot in prison, yet her continued existence so close by prevented me from ever fully moving on. The time had come for a fresh start, far away from the ghosts of past betrayal. My decision made, I gently broke the news to Edna and Richard over family dinner. Edna lowered her fork, eyes glistening with emotion. "Oh, Cassie, must you really go?" she asked softly. "These years with you and Eli have meant the world to us." I squeezed her hand, my own eyes welling up. "I'll forever be grateful for how you welcomed Eli, but too many memories haunt me here." I glanced at Eli playing happily. He deserves to grow up free from the shadows of his father's past. Richard cleared his throat gruffly. "We understand, dear. A clean slate is what you both need, but please, let us help set you up so Eli's future is secure." My heart swelled at this gesture. The ultimate display of love for the grandson they almost lost. That means everything. Thank you both, truly. Over the next few weeks, I tied up loose ends while Edna and Richard handled real estate and financial logistics. The day of our move finally arrived, bittersweet yet brimming with hope. Edna fussed over Eli, sneaking cookies and treats into his luggage when she thought I wasn't looking. As we stood at the front door for final goodbyes, the weight of the moment sank in. Edna pulled me into a crushing hug. "Promise you'll let us visit very soon?" she asked tearfully. Maybe for Eli's next birthday? I smiled through my own tears. Of course, you're both welcome anytime. Take good care of Richard, okay? Edna chuckled wetly with a wink. After one final check that Eli was securely buckled in his car seat, we all exchanged final hugs. As I shifted the car into drive, Eli cried, "Bye, Grandma! Bye, Grandpa!" while frantically waving his little hand. We drove in silence for a while, fields and farms zipping past outside. I breathed deeply, déjà vu washing over me from that pivotal drive to Silas's second funeral years ago. So much life had happened since. Where are we going, Mommy? Eli suddenly piped up from the back seat. I smiled at his bright eyes in the rearview mirror. We're going to start a new adventure, baby. New city, new house. Doesn't that sound exciting? Eli nodded enthusiastically. Will I make new friends? Oh, and visit Daddy, too? My heart fluttered hearing his innocent understanding. Yes, my sweet boy, all of that and more. A fresh start for you and me. I clicked on the radio as a beloved song came on, the same one played at Silas's wedding during our first dance. My pulse quickened at the serendipity. Glancing in the mirror again, I was struck by Eli's resemblance to his father, his same kind eyes and grin. Silas's presence filled the space around us, enveloping me in warmth and propelling us onwards, towards the new memories we would make, carrying his spirit in our hearts forever. The past was finally laid to rest. Now nothing but open road and bright skies ahead, ready for our new beginning. How quaint, my sister Clara said, her voice dripping with contempt as she eyed my dusty overalls. I had just stepped off the red-eye from Nebraska and hadn't even had a chance to shower before being whisked off to the welcome dinner for my sister's posh New York wedding. Clara looked pristine as always in her designer dress and impeccable updo, sitting next to her smarmy fiancé Mark at the head of the long dining table. Mom shot me a weary look. We weren't accustomed to such finery, having lived simple farm lives back home. Dad stared straight ahead, jaw clenched. "It's just Clara's little joke," Mark said with an indulgent chuckle. "I think it's charming that Lena here helps out on the farm. Gets her hands dirty, doesn't she?" My face burned. I opened my mouth to respond, but Dad's hand on my arm stopped me. "Why don't you tell us about the farm, Lena?" Mark prompted. "Clara doesn't like to dwell on the past, but I'd love to hear how you spend your days." All eyes turned to me as I fumbled for words. Clara and Mark's wealthy friends waited expectantly, lips pursed as if poised to smirk at my unsophisticated life. "Well, we milk the cows every morning," I began. "By hand," a woman named Vivian cut in. "How precious." The table erupted into patronizing chuckles. Mom's eyes glistened. "Now, Vivian," Clara chided lightly, "we mustn't embarrass Lena. Not everyone can afford certain luxuries." My face burned hotter, but before I could respond, Dad slammed his fist on the table. "That's enough," he bellowed. The laughter died instantly. "We may not have your money, but we can sure as hell teach you a thing or two about decency." He stood abruptly and stormed out, Mom rushing after him. Clara didn't move, just swirled her wine glass lazily. "So dramatic," she sighed. "I suppose that's what happens when you waste your life in a rural backwater." Something in me snapped. "You think you're better than us?" I seethed through gritted teeth. "Let me tell you something. That farm put food on the table your whole damn childhood. It clothed you, kept a roof over your head, and this is the thanks Mom and Dad get?" Clara arched one carefully sculpted eyebrow. "It's not my fault they didn't aspire to anything more. I'm finally getting married into a respectable family." She ran a proprietary hand over Mark's chest. "I won't make the same mistakes." Mark raised his glass. "To upward mobility," he toasted. Their friends tittered appreciatively. I saw red. Before I could stop myself, I swept Clara's crystal champagne flute off the table. It shattered dramatically on the marble floor. "Lena!" Clara shrieked, leaping up from her seat. "No, Clara," I seethed through gritted teeth. "You don't get to look down on the people who sacrificed everything for you. It's time someone teach you a real lesson in humility." I spun on my heel and rushed out, leaving shocked gasps in my wake. My hands still trembled with rage as I comforted my distraught parents back in our small, shabby hotel room. Clara's cruelty had only steeled my resolve. If she refused to appreciate her family, I would make her. One way or another, before this wedding was over, my dear sister would finally pay for her arrogance. The next few days were a flurry of wedding preparations. With Clara caught up in the minutiae of floral arrangements, menu tastings, and dress fittings, I was relegated to the background, more servant than sister, expected to fetch and carry, while Clara basked in the glow of playing bride-to-be. She barely spoke 2 words to me that didn't involve an order or complaint. As I helped address invitation after endless invitation, Clara prattled on to her maids of honor about the preparations like a general planning a military offensive. "No, the table linens must be ivory, not ecru," she was saying now, exasperated. "Honestly, must I do everything myself?" I gritted my teeth as I continued scribbling names and addresses. Clara knew nothing of doing things herself. She'd never gotten her hands dirty in her life. "Oh, Lena, don't smudge the ink," Clara chided as she peered over my shoulder. "Hurry up with those. I need help addressing the place cards next." I slammed my pen down. "Actually, I think I'll take a break," I said coldly. Before she could protest, I was out the door. My blood boiled as I roamed the manicured grounds of the lavish Hamptons estate Clara and Mark had rented for the wedding. Everywhere I turned, more extravagance confronted me. The small fortune wasted on flowers, champagne, and decor could have funded our farm for a year. And for what? A gaudy show of wealth and status. Clara didn't appreciate the true value of family. She was marrying Mark for his money and influence in her new social circle. Well, I would make sure her facade came crashing down. I found my parents resting in the shade of a large oak tree, my dad's fingers interlaced with my mom's. Clara hardly had time for them either, brushing them off whenever they tried embracing their only other daughter. My resolve hardened. She would not get away with hurting them like this. I returned inside and quietly snuck into Mark's study. Rifling through the drawers, I found bank statements and investment reports. I pocketed a few. Evidence of Mark's shady financials would make for a handy reveal at the wedding reception. Next, I dug up Clara's day planner and snapped photos highlighting her pretentious schedules and social calendar. Let's see how her fancy friends feel knowing they're accessories to flaunt, not true companions. My phone buzzed. Speak of the devil. "Where are you?" Clara's shrill voice demanded. "I'm not paying you to wander around all day. The place cards need addressing." I rolled my eyes. "On my way," I said evenly before hanging up. I tucked the evidence safely into my bag. "Soon, Clara, soon you'll wish you had treated your family better when you had the chance." The stage was set. My sister's arrogance would be her downfall. Over the next few days, my plan took shape. Clara's wedding would come crashing down in a blaze of exposed secrets and hypocrisy. I continued playing the role of dutiful sister in public, gritting my teeth through Clara's condescending barbs and imperious demands. But behind the scenes, I was gathering ammunition. My unlikely ally was the wedding planner, Samantha. We had instantly bonded over our shared frustration with Clara's tyrannical behavior. 200 roses in the centerpieces aren't enough. Apparently we need 300, Samantha fumed. Does she think money grows on trees? Want to take her down a peg? I asked casually. Samantha raised her eyebrows. What did you have in mind? Let's just say the wedding photos won't be quite as Pinterest perfect as Clara expects. A slow grin spread across Samantha's face. I'm listening. We plotted in hushed whispers when Clara wasn't around. Samantha recruited other vendors who'd been subjected to Clara's wrath, including the florist, the band, and the caterer. One glimpse of Mark's shady financial records had been enough to convince them. Piece by piece, I collected candid photos and video clips capturing Clara and Mark's true, arrogant, and conceited nature. A lifetime of pent-up resentment fueled me. My parents noticed a change in my demeanor and cornered me one afternoon in the garden. You seem distracted, honey, Mom said, worry creasing her brow. What are you planning? Dad asked outright. I sighed. No point hiding it from them. Don't worry, I said cryptically. I'm going to make sure Clara finally pays for looking down on this family. Dad frowned, but Mom squeezed my hand and nodded. Just be careful, she whispered. I knew they were hurting as much as I was. It was time to take a stand. The night before the rehearsal dinner, I snuck into the banquet hall early to meet with the staff. As we discussed logistics, I saw red lipstick smudged on a half-empty champagne glass on the head table. Interesting. I showed the photo to Samantha, whose eyes narrowed. That little of snake, she muttered. I always knew she was cheating. It was almost too perfect. Clara's sweet facade hid a rotten core. At the dinner, I surreptitiously filmed as she introduced Mark to her friends, fawning over him for show while flashing her alleged lover coy looks across the room. Gotcha. Afterwards, I added the evidence to my growing dossier. Clara's wedding was about to become a one-way ticket to public humiliation. Let's see how her elite circle reacted when they realized they'd been cozying up to a fraud. By the time I was done, Clara's reputation would be in tatters, and my family would finally have its revenge. The day before the wedding, I woke up filled with purpose. Today would involve neutralizing potential obstacles before executing my plan to humiliate Clara tomorrow. My first stop was the boutique where Clara was having her final dress fitting. I needed to get rid of her loyal minion and maid of honor, Jen. I found Jen sipping mimosas. Time to sow some doubt. Jen, I exclaimed, just who I wanted to see. I can't thank you enough for being Clara's rock through all this chaos. Jen preened. Of course I'd do anything for her. We've been best friends since college. Exactly, I said conspiratorially. Can I tell you something in confidence, as her sister? Jen leaned in eagerly. I'm worried about Clara and Mark, I said, feigning concern. Their relationship seems so transactional, you know? I even saw Mark getting cozy with another woman. Jen's eyes went wide. No, Clara said they're soulmates. She's dreamed of this wedding her whole life. I shook my head. I'm telling you as her sister, something seems off. Just keep your eyes open, okay? I'd hate to see Clara get hurt. Planting those seeds was all it took. By the time Clara finished her dress fitting, Jen was nowhere to be found. One down. Next was Mark himself. I found him reviewing seating charts. Showtime. Hey sis, Mark grinned smugly. Come to check everything meets your quaint standards? I ignored the jab. Actually, I wanted to apologize. I may have given folks the wrong impression about you. Mark blinked in surprise but quickly composed himself. Really? I appreciate that, Lena. Now to cast doubt. I can tell how much you love and respect Clara, I said, laying it on thick. All those fancy investors she's introducing you to, you'd never take advantage, right? Mark's eyes narrowed slightly before he laughed. Of course not. I'm all about family. He was a worse actor than I thought. Luckily, it didn't matter. Mark could now see me as a potential threat. Finally, I had to sabotage Clara's preparations. I found her sipping champagne while having her makeup done. Clara, you should reconsider those centerpieces, I said casually. White lilies would look so much better than roses. As expected, she flared up instantly. Excuse me? I picked ivory roses months ago. I shrugged. Oops, my mistake. Too late to change them, I guess. Clara's brow furrowed. Good. A tiny seed of superstitious doubt planted. She was too focused on bridezilla details to see the bigger picture. Everything was in place for the main event. Just one more day before Clara's entire facade collapsed. My pulse quickened. After tomorrow, my family would finally have justice. The night before Clara's wedding, I could hardly sleep, too wired with anticipation for the coming day. In the darkness, I reviewed the damning evidence against my sister one final time. The credit card statements proving Mark's shady business deals. Testimonials from mistreated wedding vendors eager for payback. Even Clara's own petty commentary against her nearest and dearest. I had it all. At dawn, I slipped out to the garden to watch the sunrise. Today was Judgment Day. My thoughts were interrupted by footsteps on the gravel behind me. I whirled around to see Clara standing there in her silk robe, arms crossed. Well, what are you hiding? She demanded. Of course, she must have noticed my repeated whispered conversations and furtive movements these past days. I quickly composed myself. Just wedding jitters, I said lightly. I want everything to go perfectly for you, sis. Clara's eyes narrowed. I don't believe you. Spill it. When I stayed silent, her face flushed with rage. She grabbed my arm roughly. Tell me what you're planning right now, she hissed, all pretense of civility gone. Behind the mask of the polished socialite lurked my sister's real petty, domineering nature. I wrenched my arm from her grasp. Take your hands off me, I spat. I don't answer to you. We stood there, eyes locked, the growing dawnlight illuminating Clara's reddening face. Have it your way, she said coldly. But if you ruin things for me, I'll make you pay. I stepped close until we were nose to nose. Too late for that, I said quietly. You've been the one making Mom and Dad pay your whole life. It ends today. I stormed off before she could respond, adrenaline coursing through me. Only a few more hours now. My expose would ruin Clara socially and financially. Let's see how her so-called friends reacted when they realized she was a shallow, materialistic fraud. She deserved it after a lifetime of looking down on us. I almost wished I could see her reaction when it happened, the dawning humiliation and panic as her facade collapsed. But I couldn't risk being caught prematurely. I would be far away by the time Clara's world came crashing down. Until then, I had to play it cool. Clara's suspicions meant I needed an ironclad alibi when things went down at the reception. Luckily, Jen was easy enough to manipulate. A few vague hints about concerns regarding Clara was enough to provoke an epic meltdown. Right on schedule, Jen barged into Clara's suite, sobbing about duplicity and betrayal, while Clara desperately tried to salvage her closest friendship before walking down the aisle. I made my escape. I had an important video to prepare and send anonymously when the time was right. Soon, Clara, your judgment day is at hand. Get ready to reap what you've sown. The day of Clara's wedding dawned bright and clear. Inside, however, a storm was brewing. As Clara glided down the aisle on my father's arm, smiling radiantly, I maintained a pleasant facade. But inside, my heart hammered with anticipation. The ceremony proceeded smoothly. If Clara suspected anything amiss, she hid it well behind her practiced porcelain smile. At last, it was time. As waiters began circulating with champagne at the reception, I slipped away to make the call. Moments later, the projector flickered on, casting an enlarged video onto the blank wall behind the head table. For one blissful moment, Clara's smile persisted, oblivious. Then chaos erupted. On screen, grainy footage showed Mark kissing a woman who was distinctly not my sister. Gasps and shouts filled the air as all eyes turned to the front. Clara's pristine smile had frozen, lips parted in horror. Mark lunged for the projector, but shoved him back into his seat. "You lying piece of filth!" The raw fury in her voice was terrifying to behold. "How dare you?" Mark stammered meaningless denials, but Clara was no longer listening. Her burning glare turned to the crowd who watched, transfixed and murmuring. "As for the rest of you backstabbing vipers," she seethed, "let's see how you like hearing what I really think of you all." With that, the video changed to show Clara at the bridal boutique, trash-talking guests by name. "Charles acts so enlightened, but he slept with half of Manhattan." "Oh, please. We all know Alexandra bought her way into the symphony board. That cow Vivian is just obsessed with me." It went on and on, Clara mercilessly shredding apart the facade of polite society and so-called friendships. I watched, transfixed, as these arrogant snobs reacted with slack-jawed shock at her vitriol. Murmurs turned to outraged shouts. "How could you?" Vivian cried, aghast. "I thought we were friends." Alexandra stood abruptly. "I won't stand here and listen to these lies." She stormed away, others moving to follow. The tableau of Clara's public evisceration was even sweeter than I imagined. I drank it in, watching with quiet satisfaction as her privileged world crumbled to dust, until Clara's wild gaze fixed on me. In 2 strides she crossed the space between us and struck me hard across the face. "You!" she snarled. "I should have known you'd try to ruin everything, you jealous little—" Whatever she planned to say next was lost as Mark grabbed her arm and snapped, "Enough!" To the remaining guests, he announced, "The wedding is off." Gasps rippled through the room. In the ensuing stunned silence, Mark turned on his heel and walked away. Clara stood motionless amid the ruins of her sham marriage and reputation. Her eyes met mine one final time, burning with impotent rage. Then she turned and fled. It was over. I had my revenge at last. Clara finally knew how it felt to have her world humiliated and exposed without mercy. For a moment, I thought I would feel triumphant. Instead, as I gazed out at the destruction I had wrought, an empty sadness overcame me. This was justice, but not redemption. My sister was not the only one with lessons to learn. As Clara's ruined wedding lay in ashes around me, I realized my own path forward remained unclear. In the chaotic aftermath of Clara's ruined wedding, I slipped away unnoticed. I knew she would come looking for me soon, crazed with anger and humiliation. Sure enough, I had just reached my room when Clara burst through the door, eyes ablaze. "You!" She advanced on me, hand raised to strike again. "I want you gone. Your petty jealousy has cost me everything." I stood my ground. "Look closer, Clara. I'm not the one who brought this on yourself." "Don't you dare," she shrieked. I was finally becoming someone, marrying into a good family, not like the nobodies we come from. Her words stung, but I held firm. Is that all that matters to you? Status and money? What about finding real meaning in life? Clara let out a hollow, bitter laugh. Don't lecture me about meaning. Real life isn't some quaint middle American fantasy. I thought you were jealous of my perfect life. Perfect? I spat back. It was a sham built on deceit and vanity. Clara flinched at the harsh truth. For a moment her haughty mask slipped, revealing the scared, insecure girl within, but then her eyes hardened again. Get out, she hissed, blind fury returning. I never want to see you again. She stormed out, slamming the door behind her. I stood there shaking, the weight of what I had destroyed hitting me. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. It was Samantha, the wedding planner. Her smile was bittersweet. Quite a day, huh? She said wryly. I'm almost sorry it's over. I let out a shaky laugh. It's for the best. Clara needs to change. Samantha nodded. Hopefully she learns her lesson. And what about you? I looked away. I didn't regret exposing Clara, but doubts were creeping in. I need time to think, I said quietly. Samantha squeezed my shoulder. Whenever you're ready, there are good people waiting. With that, she left. I wish I shared her optimism. Clara was right. I had been jealous of her seemingly perfect life. I realized now no life is perfect, only meaningful if lived with humility and compassion. The path forward would not be easy for either of us. But as I watched Clara's borrowed Bentley disappear down the gravel driveway, this time for good, I knew one thing was certain. Our sibling relationship was shattered forever. For better or worse, things would never be the same again. In the weeks following Clara's failed wedding, the gossip rags had a field day, mocking Manhattan's runaway bride. Her picture graced their covers for a week straight before some other society scandal took over. I read the headlines with a sort of numb ambivalence. I had wanted to see Clara humbled and brought low. Yet now that she was, I felt neither vindication nor satisfaction. Only sadness for what our family had become. My parents tiptoed around me, unsure what to say after everything that had happened. The unspoken distance between us was worse than any lecture. 2 weeks later, I still hadn't left New York. I kept replaying the sequence of events in my head, wishing I could unravel the tangled knot of sisterhood, jealousy, and retribution that had led us here. One day, as I wandered aimlessly through Central Park, my thoughts were interrupted by a familiar voice. Lena? Is that you? I turned in surprise to see Samantha hurrying towards me, beaming. In spite of myself, I smiled back. Samantha's warm caring was a balm amidst the emotional wreckage. We fell easily into conversation, strolling together around the pond as she caught me up on wedding gossip. Finally, she paused, expression growing serious. Forgive me for prying, but you seem burdened, she said gently. Have you reconciled with Clara yet? I let out a harsh, brittle laugh. Clara and I are done. She'll never forgive me. Samantha squeezed my shoulder. She will in time, when she's ready to change. I shook my head bitterly. Clara won't change who she is. I need to accept that. But you can change who you are, Samantha said. Leave jealousy and pettiness behind. Forgive others and yourself. Her words resonated within me. I had always thought Clara was the problem in our relationship. Only now did I see my own flaws clearly. In that moment, something shifted inside me. I saw a chance to let go of resentment and embrace empathy. My soul felt lighter than it had in years. I turned and hugged Samantha fiercely. Thank you, I whispered. I think I'm finally ready to go home. The next morning, I bid my parents a loving goodbye, promising to visit soon. As I boarded my flight back, the possibilities of the future stretched out ahead of me, rewritten. I didn't know if Clara would ever let go of her anger, but I could let go of mine. That was change enough for now. The wheels lifted off, leaving behind the weight of my sisterly grudge. When I returned home, there was a lightness in my step that hadn't been there before. Who knew what life held next? For today I was simply grateful for the wisdom I had found and the compassion I now carried within. My baby's coming. I figured you'd want to celebrate with a little gift, say $15,000. I nearly dropped my phone at the audacity in my sister Eliza's voice. After everything she'd put me through, now she had the nerve to ask me for money? You can't be serious, I said, gripping the phone tightly. You honestly think I'm going to give you $15,000? Eliza laughed lightly as if this were all some joke between sisters. Oh, come on, Arya. I know we've had our differences, but blood is thicker than water, right? It's your niece or nephew. I bit my tongue, a dozen scathing retorts on the tip of it. Eliza, my younger sister by barely a year, had always been jealous of me. It twisted into something dark when I started dating Max in college. I thought he loved me, until Eliza seduced him away in my senior year. They rushed into a Vegas wedding shortly after. The ultimate betrayal. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my anger. I'm sorry you seem to be struggling, but I cannot personally loan you any money. I have my own family to think of now. My husband Lucas walked into the kitchen just then, our 5-year-old Lily jumping into his arms with a squeal. They were my world now. Lucas raised an eyebrow at my tense expression. Who's that on the phone? He mouthed. I mimed a money gesture and he rolled his eyes. Let me guess. Your sister? He'd never forgiven Eliza for what she did to me back then. Lucas was the one who helped me move on, who showed me what real love is. I nodded and put the phone on speaker. Eliza's sugary voice filled the room. Least you could do is send a nice gift for the baby shower. Lucas set Lily down gently. Why should we celebrate someone who caused you so much pain? He crossed his arms. What's brought this on anyway? You haven't spoken to Eliza in years. You're right, I said firmly into the phone. We wish you well, Eliza, but we cannot assist you financially or otherwise. Her tone turned icy. Can't or won't? Don't pretend you're still not angry. I married Max. She snorted. So petty, Arya. I stiffened, the years-old wound throbbing as painfully as ever. Lucas gestured for the phone, and I passed it over wordlessly. Eliza, Lucas said in his detective voice, consider this a warning. Do not contact my wife again. He hung up with an air of finality before turning to me, his eyes gentle. Are you okay? I let out a shuddering breath as he pulled me close. I just wasn't expecting her to call like that. Asking for money? Unbelievable. Lily wandered over and hugged my legs. I leaned down to lift her up, pressing a kiss to her hair. No matter what Eliza said, I had everything I needed right here. I tucked Lily into bed that night, my mind still reeling from Eliza's call. Lucas came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. Penny for your thoughts, he murmured. I leaned back into him with a sigh. I just can't believe she would ask me for money after everything, and then to accuse me of still being jealous? Lucas turned me to face him, his eyes searching mine. Do you want to tell me exactly what happened between you two and Max? Maybe it would help to talk it through. I nodded slowly. Lucas knew the basics, that my sister stole my boyfriend and married him, but the full story was still painful to share. Eliza was always jealous of me growing up, I began quietly. I was the smart one, the popular one. Got better grades, more friends. When I started dating Max sophomore year of college, she hated that I had something she didn't. My hands curled into fists at the memory. She started hanging around more when Max came over, flirting with him right in front of me. He didn't even notice at first, but over time... I closed my eyes. I guess she wore him down. Next thing I knew, he's breaking up with me out of nowhere, and a week later I find out he eloped with Eliza in Vegas. Lucas shook his head, his jaw tight. I'm so sorry she put you through that, Arya. It's a horrible thing to have happen. I wiped away an angry tear. You know what the worst part was? She rubbed it in my face, kept telling me I was just jealous because she was better than me, happier than me. I let out a harsh laugh. I cut ties completely after the wedding. Hadn't talked to her since. Until today? Lucas finished grimly. He considered for a moment. What do you say we get a little justice, love? I peered up at him in surprise. What do you mean? His eyes glinted. As a detective, I have resources, contacts. What if we found out what Eliza was really up to these days? Because I guarantee you it's not all rosy. She wouldn't be asking you for money otherwise. Considering it sent a spike of anticipation through me. You mean expose whatever shady stuff she and Max are doing? For revenge? Call it justice. Lucas tilted my chin up. Maybe it's time Eliza gets a taste of her own medicine. What do you say? I thought of the years of humiliation Eliza put me through, the self-righteous smirk I knew would be on her face at that baby shower, asking me for money as if she deserved a single cent. An unfamiliar anger flooded through me, but I didn't fight it. Instead, I turned to Lucas with blazing eyes. Let's do it. So what's the plan? I asked Lucas eagerly over breakfast the next morning. Lily was occupied with her coloring book, allowing us to scheme openly. Lucas sipped his coffee, his eyes glinting. I made a few discreet inquiries about Eliza and Max last night, still waiting to hear back from my contacts, but if there's dirt to be found, we'll dig it up. Excitement and nerves twisted in my stomach. I still can't believe we're actually doing this, snooping into their lives, looking for revenge. Lucas reached over to squeeze my hand. Hey, don't think of it like revenge. Think of it as veering their karma back on course. I let out a small laugh. Well, when you put it like that. I shook my head, growing serious once more. I meant what I said last night. Eliza has this coming. After the way she tormented me, manipulated Max, my voice hardened. She destroyed our relationship, my trust in people. She deserves justice. Too right, love. Lucas's phone buzzed and he glanced down. Well now, got an interesting tidbit already. I leaned forward eagerly as Lucas showed me the text. Got recent financials for E&M. Multiple weird payments from offshore accounts. Sending you records now. This could be promising. My pulse quickened. What exactly had Eliza and Max gotten themselves into? Just then, Lily popped up with her coloring book. All done with my picture, Mommy. Wanna see? I smoothed down her hair with a smile. Of course, sweetheart. It's beautiful. Over her head, I met Lucas's gaze. Why don't you go play in your room for a bit, okay? Mommy and Daddy need to talk. She skipped off happily, and Lucas pulled out his laptop, opening the files his contact had sent. My nerves spiked at the walls of text full of numbers and transactions. Lucas gave a low whistle. Well, these two have certainly been busy. He scrolled through rapidly. Lots of money coming in from offshore accounts like my guy said, and... His brow furrowed. Money being transferred back out to various charities? What? I grabbed the laptop, skimming through the listed charities. Most seemed legitimate. Children's hospitals, wildlife conservation groups. Are they laundering money through charity donations? It's looking that way. Lucas's expression hardened. Pretty despicable, using good causes to hide illicit funds. He cracked his knuckles. Oh yes, these two are going down, but first... He reached over to grip my hand tightly. We're going to make them hurt. I have an idea. He outlined his plan, the baby shower gift that would set our revenge scheme in motion. My pulse pounded with anticipation, and I squeezed Lucas's hand fiercely. After today, Eliza's so-called perfect life would come crashing down, and this time, I would be the one looking down on her with satisfaction. Let's give my sister the rude awakening she deserves, I said, meeting Lucas's fiery gaze. The games were about to begin. The day of Eliza's baby shower arrived, my stomach churning with nerves and anticipation. You ready for this? Lucas asked as we got into his car, our gift for Eliza tucked carefully into a gift bag on the back seat. The contents, a $250 donation to a charity for fraud victims made in Eliza's name, would hopefully expose her shady financial activities to her inner circle. I smoothed my hands down my dress, taking a deep breath. As ready as I'll ever be. Let's do this. We pulled up outside the baby shower venue, an ostentatious mansion that set my teeth on edge. Of course, Eliza would choose somewhere flashy to impress her guests. We walked in to find the party already in full swing. I scanned the room, spotting Eliza holding court in the center, pregnancy glow on full display. My hands tightened around Lucas's arm, time for her charade to end. Eliza's face lit up with practiced delight when she saw us. Aria, you came, and you brought a gift, how sweet. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Max hovered behind her, face impassive. Congratulations, I forced out. Lucas just nodded, his dislike evident. An awkward silence fell. The other guests whispered curiously. Eliza laughed too loudly. Well, don't just stand there. Come in. We're about to open presents. We followed her to the gift table. I held my breath as she picked up our bag eagerly, no doubt hoping for a stack of cash. Her face froze as she read the charity certificate inside. What is this? She looked up sharply, the first cracks appearing in her polite facade. A donation, to help those harmed by fraud. Lucas said meaningfully, we thought you'd appreciate such a fitting gift. Eliza's eyes blazed, the party guests stared. What exactly do you mean by that? Eliza bit out. Max stepped forward, face darkening. Watch yourself, detective. It's interesting how defensive they're getting, no? Lucas interrupted loudly. Makes you wonder what they might be hiding. His eyes swept the silent crowd. planting seeds of doubt. Eliza advanced on us, sharp and swollen at once. "How dare you try and ruin my shower with these disgusting insinuations?" Her shrill voice echoed in the hushed room. I stepped forward, años of hurt and rage rising up. "How dare you show up in my life again asking for money, as if you didn't steal everything from me?" I seethed loudly. Gasps rose. Lucas restrained Eliza as she lunged at me. Her perfect facade lay shattered on the floor with our gift wrapping. Lucas eyed the stunned guests. "We'll see ourselves out. Give our regards to the happy couple." He spun on his heel, whisking me away. We left chaos in our wake. Eliza screeching, guests questioning, her flawless reputation unraveling before my eyes. Finally, it was her turn to hurt. As Lucas and I drove away, I let out a shaky breath. Our revenge had only just begun, but seeing Eliza exposed and outraged felt sweeter than I imagined. She wasn't going to get away with this unscathed. For the first time, I truly believed that. And it was freeing. In the aftermath of the baby shower showdown, my phone blew up with angry voicemails from Eliza. I ignored each one, blood still buzzing from the confrontation. Lucas and I lay in bed that night rehashing the fallout. "Did you see her face when she opened that gift?" I said gleefully. "She absolutely lost it." "The perfect princess with a temper after all," Lucas chuckled. His phone rang suddenly. He sat up when he saw the caller ID. "It's my financial crimes contact, Nadia. This could be promising." He answered, face intent, as Nadia spoke. I gnawed my nails nervously until Lucas ended the call with a satisfied grunt. Well, it seems our little stunt spurred some of the baby shower guests to come forward. Seems they've suspected Eliza and Max were up to shady business for a while now." I sat up eagerly. "What did they say?" Lucas's eyes gleamed. "That right around the time Eliza got pregnant, Max came into a lot of money. New cars, new house, but no one knew where it came from, and some of the funds were apparently being laundered." I clenched my fists as anger flooded through me. Of course Eliza would rope Max into illegal activity, too. Unbelievable. Is there proof? Nadia has a few leads. Lucas's expression turned steely. If those funds were obtained illegally, we'll find out. But my phone started vibrating with yet another call from Eliza. Before I could ignore, Lucas gently took my phone. "Let's give your sister a taste of her own drama, shall we?" he answered as I looked on nervously. "Eliza, what can I do for you?" Muffled shouting exploded through the speakers, and Lucas held the phone away from his ear with a smirk. I could make out a few screeched words. "Destroy you!" "How dare?" "Won't get away." Lucas just chuckled darkly once the shouts quieted. "Are you quite finished? Here is what's going to happen next, Eliza. I'm digging deep into yours and Max's affairs, and if I find even a hint of fraud, you'll have much bigger things to worry about than your reputation." He paused as Eliza tried to sputter out a response. "Oh, save it. For Arya's sake, I've let you get away with enough. That ends now." His voice lowered to a steely promise. "You'll be hearing from me soon." He ended the call on Eliza's screams. My heart pounded as I met his fiery stare. This is really happening. We could actually take her down. I gripped Lucas's hands tightly. "Thank you for standing up for me. Finally facing my tormentor after all these years, I felt empowered, unstoppable with him by my side." Lucas caressed my face gently. "Always, my love. Our family comes first now." His eyes hardened, and we protect our own. Over the next few weeks, Lucas dove headfirst into investigating Eliza and Max's financial history. He spent late nights poring over records, meeting with contacts, chasing leads. I caught him furiously scribbling on his conspiracy board when I went to call him for dinner. "Any breaks in the case?" I'd ask. Lucas would just tap his nose. "It's all coming together, but we're going to need more concrete evidence soon." His eyes took on a ruthless glint that sent a secret thrill through me. Lucas was always professional and ethical in his police cases. Seeing him embrace such ruthless determination for my sake made me love him even more. Finally, one night over dinner, he beckoned me close with excitement gleaming in his eyes. "I've found something big," he whispered so Lily wouldn't overhear. "A paper trail linking Max to an offshore holding company that's definitely a front. Funds come flowing in weekly, get bounced around different charities, and wind up in Max and Eliza's pockets." I finished in disgust. "So it is illegal money laundering." Lucas nodded. "Almost certainly fraud. Could be dealing with some dangerous people, too." But, he held up a hand before I could interrupt, I haven't found concrete proof yet, just hints. His expression grew serious. We'll need access to Max's home office, his computer. It's risky, but if I can get physical evidence, accounts, transactions, contacts, we can take it to the police and blow this whole operation open. Apprehension and excitement dueled within me. Like breaking and entering? I clarified nervously. Lucas squeezed my hands, eyes blazing. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. Think of Lily. At her name, my heart steeled itself. I would do anything to protect our daughter. Okay, let's do this. We made plans for Lucas to sneak into Max's office the next day while Eliza had a prenatal appointment and Max was at work. My heart pounded as I dropped Lucas off down the block the next morning. He gave me a hard kiss. See you soon with the evidence to bury them for good. An hour later, his blunt text came through. Got it? Relief flooded through me, followed swiftly by adrenaline as I realized this was really happening. After today, Eliza and Max's facade would come crashing down for good. I was thrumming with nervous energy when Lucas climbed back into the car, manila envelope tucked carefully under his jacket. Wordlessly, he passed it to me. I opened it with trembling fingers to see Max's financial records, emails with shady contacts, everything we needed to expose the truth. We did it. I breathed. Lucas's eyes mirrored my exhilaration. Let's go end this. Lucas called in a favor from one of his trusted police captains, Mike, to help us take Eliza and Max down. We filled him in and showed him the evidence. His lips got thinner and thinner. These are very dangerous people your family's gotten mixed up with, he said gravely. We laid out a sting operation to catch Eliza and Max red-handed. Tomorrow, when Max went to collect one of his charity deposits, the cops would be waiting. That night I lay awake, heart pounding with anticipation, fear and elation. Lucas soothed me with strong hands, kissing away my tension until I slept. We dropped Lily at my mother's the next morning, so she'd be safe. Lucas, Mike, and a team of undercover cops set off to secretly stake out Eliza and Max's mansion, getting into position. Finally, my phone lit up with a single word from Lucas. Go. Hands trembling, I punched in Eliza's number. She answered with a suspicious, "What?" I took a breath, hiding my nerves. "I want to talk. Clear the air if you're open to it." Lucas coached me on how to reel her in. A long pause before Eliza sighed loudly. "Fine, just you, though. Come over now if you're coming." She hung up without waiting for a reply. Gotcha. I drove to her mansion, shock nerve electric, rehearsing my lines. The cops' vans were well concealed as I walked up and knocked sharply. Eliza opened the door, belly rounded. She eyed me warily. "Well, you wanted to talk, so talk." I cleared my throat. "I'm sorry about how things went down. The shower, me accusing you. I should have talked privately first." Lucas said laying it on thick was crucial. Eliza looked slightly mollified. She stepped aside in wordless invitation. I hid a triumphant smile as I walked inside, blood roaring in my ears. She took the bait. "Your move, Lucas." We sat across from each other in the living room I'd helped decorate, once upon a time, before Eliza ruined everything. I took a deep breath. "I need to know one thing. The money, where does it actually come from?" I asked bluntly. "I won't judge. I just want the truth. Come on, Eliza. Trust me, just this once." Eliza shifted with a mix of nerves and defiance. When she finally spoke, her voice came out strained. "If you must know, Max has been doing some consulting work for some very influential people overseas." Code words spilled from her lips. Overseas clients, charity projects, consulting fees. With each damning phrase, my heart pounded harder. We had her. I hid a smile and leaned forward, the picture of understanding. "I'm glad Max found new work. We all do what we must." I patted her hand, ignoring her surprise. "Now, can I please use your bathroom?" I walked steadily through the mansion as if I still knew its halls by heart, right to the home office where I knew the cops were lying in wait. Eliza followed, suspicion creeping into her voice. "Why this bathroom? Mine is closer." I paused outside the office, bracing myself. "You'll see in just a moment." Then I shoved the door open to utter chaos within. "Police! Get down, now!" Everything erupted at once. Police swarming a stunned Max by his computer, Eliza shrieking as an officer arrested her, Lucas striding out to grip me in a fierce hug. "You did wonderfully, love," he murmured proudly before going to coordinate with Mike. I watched, knees weak, as Max and Eliza were dragged away in handcuffs, their wealth and status no match for true justice. In the aftermath, Lucas and I gave our statements, handing over the evidence that sealed the guilty verdict at their trial. Fraud, money laundering, racketeering. Eliza screamed venom at me until the end, while Max just glared silently. The judge showed no leniency, sentencing them both to 10 years behind bars. I held my head high as Eliza was led away, her baby bump and diamond rings no shelter from cold steel cuffs. She'd lost everything, her mansion sold off, bank accounts frozen, high society friends abandoning her. Exactly as she deserved. Lucas wrapped an arm around me as we left the courthouse, flashes going off around us. "How do you feel, love?" I took a deep breath of the crisp air, feeling freer than I had in years. "It's finally over. She can't hurt me or anyone else again." I smiled up at my husband, my champion. We won. He pulled me into a fiery kiss before tucking me under his arm. "Now, I believe a celebration is in order. Lily's waiting." That night after Lily was asleep, Lucas popped open a bottle of champagne. As we cuddled together sipping bubbly, he raised his glass. "To new beginnings. Now your future is wide open, without toxic ties dragging you down. We can start fresh, the three of us." I clinked his glass gently. The coming years unfurled before me, peaceful and bright. I can finally close that dark chapter for good. Eliza wanted my life. Now she can live with the consequences of her greed. I shook my head ruefully. I almost feel sorry for her baby. Don't waste pity on them. Lucas lifted my knuckles to his lips. The only ones who deserve your energy now are Lily and I. Laying in his arms later that night, I sent out a silent thanks to whoever decided to make this wonderful man my soulmate, for guiding me through the darkness back into the light. Now the future held nothing but hope and joy with my little family beside me. I snuggled deeper into Lucas's embrace with a smile. After years of anguish, I could finally sleep easy. The past was nothing but dust. Ahead lay only bright skies.